Chapter 1624. In Langia Pavilion, Tang Zheng went straight to the fourth floor and saw the exorcism mirror in the center of the empty space. It was as tall as a person. The exorcism mirror was made of an unknown material. It was completely black and engraved with complicated patterns. It looked like a circle of lace wrapped around the mirror. He walked straight to the exorcism mirror. His figure appeared in the mirror. It was incomparably clear. There were no more illusions, and there was no black chi on his body. This was because the black chi represented the inner demons. The inner demons had been eliminated, so naturally, it was incomparably clean. He walked around the exorcism mirror and looked it up and down. He had never thought of this before, so naturally, he had not carefully sized up the exorcism mirror. Now that he had carefully observed and thought about it, he muttered to himself thoughtfully, "I can't bring anyone else into Langia Pavilion. Naturally, I can only take the exorcism mirror out, just like taking other magic treasures. However, if I take it away, the other dragons won't be able to exorcise the inner demons." He pinched his chin and stared at the exorcism mirror with bright eyes. After a long time, he slapped his thigh and said, "I've got it. If I can return the exorcism mirror, won't this problem be solved?" However, this was not an easy task. In the past, after he took away the magic treasures, he had thought about whether he could return them to Langia Pavilion. However, he failed after trying. He could take the magic treasures from Langia Pavilion, but he could not return them. This was a one-way process. It didn't work in the past, but it doesn't mean it won't work now. He shook his head, and his gaze gradually became determined. Bang! He grabbed the exorcism mirror with both hands, but it did not move at all. Rise! He growled and exerted force with both hands. However, he found that the exorcism mirror was as heavy as 1,000 kilograms, but it still did not move. He let go of his hands and looked at the exorcism mirror in surprise. This mirror was really strange. He could not move it, let alone take it out of Langia Pavilion. Brute force won't work. I have to think of another way. He did not give up. With a thought, a mighty aura rose from his body. Bang! His hands landed on the exorcism mirror again. The exorcism mirror buzzed and trembled. He had already used his divine power. The power was unimaginable. But even so, the exorcist mirror only trembled, and did not actually leave the ground. Whoosh! Tang Zheng exhaled heavily. The muscles in his arms trembled, but he did not achieve the desired effect. I can even move Mount Buzhou. Do you think I can't move a mere mirror? He gritted his teeth, unwilling to admit defeat. He might as well go all out against the exorcist mirror. Bang! Whoosh! He used the sky-swallowing technique, and 2 black holes spread out in his palms. The violent suction force produced a huge vortex. The 2 black holes merged into one and the black light completely enveloped the exorcist mirror. The exorcist mirror trembled violently and gradually left the ground. Tang Zheng's eyes lit up. He was overjoyed. Ha ha ha, the sky-swallowing technique is indeed powerful. Even the exorcist mirror is unable to withstand its immense power. Of course, he would not allow the exorcist mirror to be sucked into the black hole. That would be equivalent to entering the heavenly realm. If the exorcist mirror turned into a wisp of energy, wouldn't all his previous efforts be wasted? He would also destroy an extremely important treasure. Since the sky-swallowing technique could shake the exorcist mirror, he could use the sky-swallowing technique to control the exorcist mirror when he was about to leave. Then, they would leave together. He believed that this was a workable method. He was relieved. He did not expect to have such a huge gain and complete his first goal not long after entering the Langia Pavilion. He was about to cancel the sky-swallowing technique when he realized that the black light suddenly flashed. Even the Langia Pavilion trembled. The space seemed to have become unstable. What's going on? He hurriedly looked around. The place seemed to be on the verge of collapse as if there was an earthquake. The commotion was so huge that it made one tremble in fear. He did not expect this change, but he vaguely guessed that it was related to the sky-swallowing technique. Indeed, the sky-swallowing technique was not an ordinary spell. The sky-swallowing technique was equivalent to the spatial door of the heavenly realm, and the world inside the dragon seal was equivalent to another small world. This world was not as stable as he had imagined. Otherwise, it would not be so small. The heavenly realm was a bigger world than this world. The strength of the energy contained in the two could not be compared at all. The black hole was created here, and it had a violent impact on this space. In the past, he had used the sky-swallowing technique in the dragon seal to absorb the souls of the dragon slayers, but there were no such strong side effects. That was then, and this was now. At that time, his sky-swallowing technique was not as powerful as it was now. Now, he had cultivated the sky-swallowing technique to the highest realm, sky-swallowing. Now that he used the sky-swallowing technique in the dragon seal, the impact on this space was very strong. It made the Langia pavilion on the verge of collapse. This world seemed to be about to collapse. The dragon seal was the holy land of every dragon. It was equivalent to the spiritual source. It was a huge treasure. If the dragon seal collapsed, it would be a devastating blow to the dragon race. Although Tang Jing did not think so much, he realized that something was wrong. This was definitely related to his sky-swallowing technique, so he had to stop it immediately. Just as he had this thought, the power of the sky-swallowing technique increased wildly. The light that enveloped the exorcist mirror suddenly flashed and was sucked into the black hole with a whoosh, disappearing. Then, Tang Zheng had time to withdraw the sky-swallowing technique and make the black hole disappear. However, the fourth floor had already become empty, and there was no longer the exorcist mirror. The Langia pavilion stopped trembling, and everything returned to normal. However, Tang Zheng widened his eyes and looked around. He did not know whether to laugh or cry at this scene. His sudden idea had almost caused a disaster. Moreover, how was he going to end this? If the exorcist mirror was sucked into the heavenly realm, wouldn't it turn into a wisp of energy? All his previous efforts would be wasted. Suddenly, his heart skipped a beat, and a strange expression appeared on his face. The heavenly realm was connected to his mind, and any movement in the heavenly realm would appear in his heart. Therefore, he immediately discovered the abnormality in the heavenly realm. After a wave of fluctuations appeared in the heavenly realm, the exorcist mirror actually appeared out of thin air in the sky. It floated gently like a cloud, and did not turn into a wisp of energy as he was worried. The exorcist mirror was intact. He was overjoyed and could not help but cheer, ha ha ha, the exorcist mirror is actually fine. The heavens are really helping me. This was really full of twists and turns. His heart was like riding a roller coaster, reaching the peak one moment and then falling into the abyss the next. His good mood did not last long, and his expression instantly froze. This was because once the exorcist mirror entered the heavenly realm, he would not be able to take it out. The heavenly realm could only be entered and not exited. It had always been like this. Although the exorcist mirror was intact, wouldn't it be useless? Wouldn't all his previous efforts be wasted? For the latest novel updates, please visit the website. Chapter 1625. I can't use the exorcist mirror. Time is of the essence, so I'll deal with the other matter first. He looked around, carefully sizing up the space of the Langia pavilion. There was a limit to how long every dragon could stay in the Langia pavilion, and they could only enter once a month. He wanted to see if he could break this limit. This is also a space, but it's not as vast and complicated as the human world or the sky beyond heaven. Of course, it's also not comparable to the heavenly realm. I'm well versed in the laws of space, so it's not impossible for me to break this limit. He was full of confidence, so he simply closed his eyes and operated the laws of space, quietly feeling the wonders of this world. Only the dragon race could reach this world, and they had to go through the dragon mark on their forehead. This was the peculiarity of this world, a feature that other worlds didn't have. This showed that when the dragon race's ancestors created this world, they had considered it and made the corresponding preparations. It was completely different from other worlds. Other worlds could be passed through the spatial door, but this didn't apply to the dragon seal world. He gently touched his forehead, and his thoughts moved. He was afraid that the spatial door of this world had fused with the dragon race's dragon mark, so only the dragon race could open it. His guess wasn't wrong. Back then, the dragon race's ancestors had spent a lot of effort to create the dragon seal world, creating a top-secret world for the dragon race. Naturally, they wouldn't allow outsiders to enter, so they specially set up various restrictions and thresholds for the dragon seal world. Tang Zheng was well versed in the laws of space, and had rich experience in passing through space. Furthermore, his cultivation was profound, and he was also from the dragon race. When he calmed down and used his divine ability, he gradually felt the mysteries of the dragon seal world. Tang Zheng discovered that his divine sense was drifting, merging into the darkness. His divine sense spread out in the darkness, as if he was searching for something. It was like looking for a needle in a haystack, with little hope. He couldn't completely explain what was going on, but he had a premonition that this was definitely the effect of the laws of space. Therefore, he didn't deliberately stop it, but allowed this feeling to spread. He was like a ghost, drifting in the darkness, looking for the light of dawn. He didn't know how long this feeling lasted. Finally, the light of dawn appeared. This wasn't true light, but a mysterious connection that appeared between him and the dragon seal world. He was overjoyed as if he had obtained a treasure. His divine sense extended endlessly at an extremely fast speed from the Langia pavilion to the outside. The area shrouded by the thick fog became clear to him. It was completely displayed in his mind. Not long after, his divine sense arrived at the inverted Langia pavilion. In a short period of time, he toured the entire Dragonmark world. This was something that could never have been done in the past. However, he now had some kind of mysterious connection with the dragon seal world. All of this was easy and natural. Although he couldn't reach the level of knowing the heaven realm like the back of his hand, he could still sense the other worlds. He suddenly had a flash of inspiration. All of this must be the effect of the space laws. The space laws resonated with the space laws, resulting in such an effect. However, it was not easy to achieve this. Perhaps there were many factors that contributed to his success, and one of them was the advantage of the dragon clan. Could this situation be transferred to other places? For example, the human world. If he could completely control everything in the world and travel the world spiritually, wouldn't nothing be able to escape his eyes? The so-called clairvoyant eyes and clairvoyant ears were far inferior to this point. Of course, it wasn't easy to achieve this, but he immediately thought of another point: heavenly chess. With heavenly chess, wouldn't everything be under his control? If he combined heavenly chess with his space laws, wouldn't it produce a miraculous chemical reaction and complete his plan? This was something that Ji Wuxiang couldn't do back then, because he didn't understand the space laws. However, Tang Zheng was well versed in the space laws, and had the experience of traversing through space. It was like adding wings to a tiger. How could he miss such a good opportunity? He had never thought of this before. Now that he had a flash of inspiration, he thought of this point. He was extremely excited and wanted to test it out immediately. With great difficulty, he suppressed the excitement in his heart and calmed himself down. He focused his attention on the dragon seal world, strengthening and consolidating this connection. In the past, he had always been forced to leave the dragon seal world. Now that he had this mysterious connection, he had a plan in his heart and decided to test it out to see if he could leave on his own. Whoosh! He took a deep breath and activated his divine ability, pushing his comprehension of the laws of space to the extreme. The air around him became blurry, rippling like water. Puff! He disappeared. In the next second, he left the Langia pavilion, and his divine sense returned to his body. He suddenly opened his eyes and stared at the ceiling with a burning gaze. The corner of his mouth rippled with joy, and his hands involuntarily clenched into fists. I finally took the initiative to leave the dragon seal world. This was equivalent to completing half a step. Next, he would have to go in again. This would be more difficult than coming out, because he had to break the original restrictions of the dragon's seal world. He didn't stop and used his divine ability once again. The dragon mark on his forehead immediately blossomed with a resplendent golden light. His divine sense didn't immediately enter the Langia pavilion, but established a connection with the dragon's seal world. Only when this connection was strong to a certain level, could he enter again. He continuously activated the space laws, and the power in his body was like a surging river, violently flowing through his meridians. Whoosh! 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 The surrounding air rippled, as if there were waves splashing. His expression was solemn to the extreme. He gritted his teeth and clenched his fists, causing his veins to bulge. Golden light slowly spread from his forehead to his entire body. Not long after, his entire body was bathed in golden light. Pieces of golden scales appeared on the surface of his body, like a layer of golden armor. He appeared incomparably awe-inspiring. Roar! Suddenly, he raised his head, and a dragon's roar burst out from his throat, resounding throughout the villa. On New Year's Eve, it instantly attracted everyone's attention. Fortunately, there was a restriction in this place. Otherwise, the dragon's roar would have definitely spread throughout the entire capital, and who knows how much of a commotion it would cause. Golden light flickered intensely. Enchanting and the rest had already rushed in after hearing the roar. They only saw a dazzling golden light filling the entire room, making them unable to look straight at it. Tang Zheng was coincidentally in the center of the golden light. Whoosh! Chapter 1626. Tang Zheng's eyes widened as he looked at himself in disbelief. He stretched out his 5 fingers and groped around his body a few times, confirming that this was his real body. He raised his head and looked over. The Langia pavilion was quietly standing in front of him. Damn it! How did my physical body come in here? Although he thought that he would succeed, he never thought that his physical body would enter the dragon seal world instead of his divine sense. Whoosh! He let out a long breath and accepted this reality. Since he was already here, he might as well make the best of it. Since his physical body could enter, he would see what benefits there were. Hidden profound sword. He shouted loudly as a dazzling sword light burst out from his body. It soared into the sky and floated above his head. His gaze revealed a trace of surprise as he stared at the hidden profound sword. He never thought that once his physical body entered, he would be able to summon the hidden profound sword. After all, the hidden profound sword had fused with his physical body, so he also brought his magic treasure in. This way, if I encounter a dragon slayer in the dragon seal world, my battle strength will increase by a lot. With a wave of his hand, the hidden profound sword once again fused into his body and disappeared. The corner of his mouth hooked up into a smile as he urged the law of space. Everything became subtle again as ripples appeared in the air. Whoosh! He disappeared from the dragon seal world. In the next second, he appeared in front of Enchanting and the others. Everyone was bewildered as they watched Tang Zheng disappear in front of them. Before they could figure out what was going on, a figure suddenly flashed and Tang Zheng appeared again. He was no different from before, but the golden scales had already disappeared. Everyone was shocked as they stared at him, their eyes filled with question marks. What happened to his body? Looking at everyone's gaze, Tang Zheng smiled indifferently and said, "Don't worry, everyone can disperse." Regarding the dragon seal world, other than the dragon clan, it was indeed inappropriate to tell others too much. Moreover, no one else could help with this matter. Everyone was bewildered as they gradually dispersed. Only Tang Zheng was left in the huge room. He had not had the time to digest his gains, especially thinking of a way to take the exorcist mirror out of the heaven realm. This was a top priority. With a thought, his consciousness entered the heaven realm and surrounded the exorcist mirror tightly. Wang! The exorcist mirror began to vibrate as if it had sensed his consciousness. The exorcist mirror didn't move at all when it was in the Langia pavilion. Now that I've left the Langia pavilion, it reacted to my divine sense. Fine, then I'll see if I can help you leave the heaven realm. He had absolute control over the heaven realm. Therefore, with just a thought, the exorcist mirror flew up with a whoosh and soared into the sky, trying to break through the invisible spatial restraints and leave the heaven realm. Bang! With a loud bang, the exorcist mirror collided with an invisible barrier. It shook violently but did not leave the heaven realm. Sigh, he let out a long sigh. It seemed that he had been too optimistic and had underestimated the heaven realm. However, he did not give up. He thought to himself, once the exorcist mirror left the heaven realm, it would open up the connection between the heaven realm and the outside world. In the future, the heaven realm would no longer be a useless place. Instead, it would be able to play a huge role. Therefore, he quickly calmed his mind and made a comeback. This time, he did not use brute force. Instead, he used the spatial law. In the past, he had tried to let the things in the heaven realm leave. However, that invisible barrier made him helpless. He did not know if he would succeed this time. As soon as he used the spatial law, his connection with the heaven beyond heaven became even closer. He was originally the master of the heaven beyond heaven. At this moment, his consciousness and the heaven beyond heaven became one. It was as if he was the heaven beyond heaven and the heaven beyond heaven was him. This feeling was very mysterious and unprecedented. He was enlightened. His consciousness once again wrapped tightly around the exorcist mirror. The exorcist mirror immediately emitted a ball of light. It did not shake as violently as before. Swoosh! A dazzling light shot out from the exorcist mirror. It descended from the sky and illuminated the heaven and earth of the heaven realm. All the plants and trees were enveloped by this light. Even the tree of life was no exception. Wisps of black gas slowly rose from all living things. It was like smoke rising in spirals. It was exceptionally spectacular. This. Tang Zheng was shocked. He looked at this scene in disbelief. Of course, he recognized this scene. This was the process of the exorcist mirror expelling the inner demons. All living things had spirits, and all living things also had inner demons. The exorcist mirror had directly expelled all the inner demons in the heaven realm. Immediately, the tree of life also glowed. It actually grew a little taller. Wow, the effect is so good. He could not wait to get the exorcist mirror out of the heaven realm. He quickly focused and held his breath. The spatial law was used to the extreme. Buzz! The surrounding air vibrated violently. Ripples spread in all directions. It was a spectacular sight. Is it going to succeed? He seemed to have sensed something. Whoosh! A stream of air spun rapidly in the sky and gradually turned into a black vortex. It was very similar to the scene when he used the sky-swallowing skill. This black vortex quickly turned into a black hole. The black light gradually wrapped around the exorcist mirror. The light on the exorcist mirror was also swallowed by the black hole. Gradually, the exorcist mirror disappeared into the black hole. Whoosh! The exorcist mirror completely disappeared and left the heaven realm. Tang Zheng was dumbfounded. He never thought that his sudden idea would actually succeed. He had tried so many times and failed, but this time, he actually succeeded. It seemed that he had a deeper understanding of the spatial law after traveling through space several times. All of this had benefited him greatly. In addition, his cultivation had also increased by a lot. This was also a big help. Both were indispensable. Only then would he have a chance to succeed in one go. He was wild with joy. In this way, wouldn't the heaven realm and the outside world be connected? Once this passage was opened, the benefits to him would be self-evident. However, he did not let the ecstasy go to his head. He quickly retracted his divine sense and found that the exorcist mirror was quietly placed beside him. The exorcist mirror had successfully come out of the heaven realm. The passage between the two worlds had been successfully opened. He waved his fist a few times, unable to hide his joy. He walked around the exorcist mirror. The more he looked at it, the happier he became. He could not help but mutter to himself, the exorcist mirror is a magic treasure, and a sacred tool at that. Its function is to expel inner demons. This is something that other magic treasures can't compare to. The exorcist mirror is an ownerless item. How can I recklessly waste a heavenly treasure? If I drip blood on it to recognize it as its master, the effect of expelling inner demons might be even better. He became restless. He stretched out his finger and forced a drop of blood out from his fingertip. Pa! The drop of blood landed on the exorcist mirror and immediately rippled with a bloody light. The blood turned into thousands of wisps and swam through the entire exorcist mirror. To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Chapter 1627. Blood covered the exorcist mirror, especially on the surface of the mirror. It was like a spider web made of blood, leaving a deep impression. Suddenly, with a flash of blood light, the blood light completely merged into the mirror and disappeared. Master recognition successful. The exorcist mirror had become Tang Zheng's magic treasure. Master. The exorcist mirror's voice sounded in Tang Zheng's mind. The corner of Tang Zheng's mouth hooked up into a faint smile, and asked straightforwardly, Exorcist mirror, other than exorcising inner demons, what other effects do you have? Master, not only can I exorcise inner demons, I can also seduce inner demons. The exorcist mirror replied methodically. Tang Zheng's eyes lit up, he was overjoyed. He had originally asked casually, but he did not expect there to be such a pleasant surprise. Not only could the exorcist mirror expel inner demons, it could also seduce inner demons. As a cultivator, he knew very well what it meant to seduce inner demons. If he was facing an enemy, once the enemy's inner demons were seduced, their fighting strength would decrease sharply, and they would go berserk. How could they still have the strength to fight? Therefore, when facing an enemy, the exorcist mirror could play a pivotal role. Ha ha ha, the heavens are helping me, to actually let me have such a sacred tool. Tang Zheng laughed loudly. Originally, I wanted to return it to Langya, but now it seems that I can't do that. In front of a strong enemy, the exorcist mirror can help me. If I return it, it would be a waste of God's gift. Even if there are dragons who need to exorcise inner demons, I can personally exorcise inner demons for them in the future. He nodded to himself and made his decision. He gently stroked the exorcist mirror with his finger. Ripples appeared on the surface of the exorcist mirror. Then, with a flash of light, the exorcist mirror disappeared into the Sumer world. Back then, Yi Meiyu's Traceless Dream spell could create illusions and confuse people's minds. It had many similarities to the exorcist mirror's effects, but she definitely couldn't be compared to the exorcist mirror. If I see Yi Meiyu again, I will definitely let her have a taste of the exorcist mirror. The New Year's bell had already rung. They came to the front of the bonfire in the villa. Looking at the lively scene of singing and dancing, he did not disturb them. It was rare for the sorcerer tribe to have time to relax. These few days, they would treat it as a vacation. What awaited the sorcerer tribe was even more brutal training and cultivation. After the spring festival, he would personally use the exorcism mirror to expel their inner demons. Then, he would refine many pills to rapidly increase their cultivation. As for the heaven realm, although Tang Zheng had already opened up a passage between the two realms, it was still unknown whether people could safely pass through the passage and whether they would be turned into waves of energy like before. Therefore, for the sake of safety, he would not use the lives of the witches for experiments. He would only make a decision when he used the sky-swallowing technique to deal with enemies in the future and see if the enemies were sucked into the heaven realm and turned into energy. He looked at the window of Mu Hongyan's room and a bitter smile appeared on his face. It was so close, but because of Nana, she did not dare to sneak in through the window. Nana, this little girl, was getting older and smarter. There were still many things that he had to avoid from her. How could he teach a child the wrong thing? He took a deep breath and could only endure it as he returned to his bedroom. He lay on the bed and looked at the ceiling. There was a restless aura in his heart that kept stirring. Ever since it was past 12 o'clock and the new year had arrived, this restless feeling had gradually become stronger. At first, he did not pay much attention to it, but now that it was late at night, this feeling was especially clear. He tossed and turned, unable to sleep, and muttered in his heart, "What's wrong with me? Could it be that I really can't sleep without a woman? I'm not that kind of man." He shook his head and hurriedly channeled his energy to suppress the restless flames in his heart. He fell asleep in a daze. Late at night. Hong. A muffled sound came from Tang Zheng's body. This sound was not loud, as if something had broken. Then, his body immediately released a blazing aura. It was as if a wave of heat had been aroused from his body. But he did not wake up. He still had his eyes closed, and there was a pained expression on his face. Gotcha. Suddenly, the door lock was gently twisted. A figure flashed into the room at the door and ran straight to Tang Zheng, who was on the bed. "You little rascal, in the middle of the night you still dare to lure people to sneak in. See how I deal with you later." It turned out that Mu Hongyan had taken advantage of the time when Nana was asleep to sneak into Tang Zheng's room. But Tang Zheng did not wake up. It was as if he had turned a deaf ear to her. "Humph, still pretending to be asleep." Mu Hongyan wrinkled her delicate nose. She was very clear that with Tang Zheng's cultivation, she would definitely not be able to escape his detection as soon as she entered the room. But he still did not move. It was obvious that he was doing it deliberately. She simply tiptoed to the bedside and glanced at Tang Zheng, who had his eyes closed. A mischievous smile appeared on her lips. She tiptoed and directly pounced on him. Bang! The two of them crashed into each other. Mu Hongyan thought that he would catch her, but she did not expect that she would crash into him heavily. This was greatly beyond her expectations. She did not care about the pain in her body. She greeted Tang Zheng's chest with her fist and complained, "Who told you to be naughty? You didn't catch me. Now you hurt me." Suddenly, her voice came to an abrupt stop, as if someone had choked her throat. Her eyes became strange. She lowered her head and stared at Tang Zheng. "Ah!" she exclaimed, and her face suddenly changed. She hurriedly hugged Tang Zheng's head and shouted, "Tang Zheng, what's wrong with you? Wake up quickly." But Tang Zheng did not move at all. He was like a piece of wood. No matter how she shook him, he did not respond at all. Now she knew that things were serious. The two of them had not been separated for long before he became like this. No one would have thought that he would be like this. As for his specific situation, she was even more confused. So she hurriedly grabbed Tang Zheng's wrist and tried to use her chi to explore his specific situation. Bang! However, a huge rebounding force hit her hand directly. As if she had been electrocuted, she actually flew off the bed and almost fell to the ground. She awkwardly stood firm and stared blankly at the bed. Tang Zheng still did not move, as if all of this had nothing to do with him, as if he was not involved. This. She had never seen him like this. Could it be that he was sick? Could cultivators get sick? She could not be sure. She had never heard of it. Could it be that the pure yang energy had erupted? She had an idea and another idea came up, but she immediately rejected it. Because she knew very well what kind of scene the eruption of pure yang energy was like. It was definitely not like this wooden block. If she was lying on top of him, he would have already taken action and absorbed the pure yin energy. Chapter 1628. Not long after, Tang Zheng's room was filled with people. The ordinary witch clan did not know that he had fallen ill, only a few core members knew about it. Everyone watched over him worriedly. They had tried all sorts of methods, but they still did not succeed in waking him up. All of their faces were filled with worry. Heaven Monk was the one with the highest cultivation and the most experience. He sat at the head of the bed and took Tang Zheng's pulse, his fingers pressing down on his pulse. Although he was mentally prepared, a strong rebounding force almost sent him flying. His face immediately became serious and gloomy. He stared at Tang Zheng with a burning gaze, as if he wanted to see through him completely. However, it was all in vain. Tang Zheng was like an unfathomable ocean. His eyesight and knowledge were not enough to completely see through him. However, he was still stronger than the others. He gradually saw some clues. After pondering for a long time, he finally released his fingers with lingering fear. The others all talked at once and asked worriedly, "How is he?" Looking at the pairs of worried eyes, Tian Chanzi sighed faintly, and said, "There is an extremely huge power in his body, like a volcano, temporarily suppressed, but it can erupt at any time. At that time, I'm afraid it won't be such a quiet scene. Could it be the pure yang force?" Mu Hongyan's heart skipped a beat, and she blurted out, "This." Tian Chanzi pinched his beard and muttered to himself. Mu Hongyan seemed to be deep in thought, and said, "But this is completely different from when he used to release the pure yang force." This was precisely where she was hesitant. In fact, she was very familiar with the way Tang Zheng used the pure yang force, and it was completely different from the way it was now. At that time, his body was like a piece of soldering iron, fiery red and scalding. But now, although his body temperature had risen a little, it was far from reaching that state. Suddenly, Tang Dehai, who had been silent all this time, slapped his thigh and anxiously shouted, "Crap, I'm afraid I made a mistake." "What's the matter?" The others were shocked, and they couldn't care less about the shock in their hearts as they hurriedly asked. Tang Dehai said with incomparable regret, "Everyone says that little Zheng's pure yang energy exploded on his 20th birthday. I have always treated the day I picked him up as his birthday, but in fact, he was actually born before that. As for how much earlier, I don't know." After Tang Dehai finished speaking, he squatted on the ground and hugged his head with both hands. He was in intense pain. Everyone suddenly realized that there was indeed such a possibility. Mu Hongyan muttered to herself, "His birthday is on the 18th of the third month of the lunar calendar. If it was earlier, I'm afraid it would be in February or even the first month. Could it be that the power of pure yang really broke out?" Mu Hongyan was not entirely correct. Tang Zheng's actual birth date was not the first lunar month, but the second day of the second lunar month, the day when the dragon raised its head. As for Tang Zheng's situation, it was indeed a sign of the eruption of pure yang energy, but it was completely different from the usual eruption of pure yang energy. This was because the two of them could not be mentioned in the same breath. The pure yang energy was supposed to erupt on his birthday, but it was brought forward. This had to be blamed on the Heaven and Earth Palace. Tang Zheng and Xiao Bai entered the Heaven and Earth Palace at the same time. Cultivating in the Heaven and Earth Palace was twice the result with half the effort. Tang Zheng thought that the time in the Heaven and Earth Palace had slowed down and stagnated. In fact, he had completely guessed wrong. The time in the Heaven and Earth Palace had not slowed down, but rather sped up. Time flew by like a shuttle. A day outside was a year, 10 years, or even 100 years inside. The ancestor was not wrong. This was the truth of the Heaven and Earth Palace. However, this was also relative. When one was inside, one would not feel the passage of time. Although Tang Zheng had obtained a huge harvest in the Heaven and Earth Palace, the Heaven and Earth Palace had also affected his body and the power of pure yang, causing the power of pure yang to erupt earlier. As soon as the New Year's bell rang, all of these effects appeared. The power of pure yang became restless, but it was completely different from before. His pure yang energy did not erupt like a volcano. Instead, it accumulated bit by bit. His body was like a volcano, and his pure yang energy was like blazing hot magma. It had been slowly accumulating until it reached its peak. Only then would it erupt. This was different from the previous eruptions of pure yang energy. Even Mu Hongyan had been deceived. Mu Hongyan had accidentally revealed a portion of the truth. She looked worriedly at Tang Zheng. Tian Chanzi stroked his beard thoughtfully. He muttered to himself, could it be that the power of pure yang has really erupted ahead of time? That would be terrible. Since ancient times, there had been a few celestials who had possessed the 9 yang saint body. However, many of them had not passed through the crisis of 20 years old. Most of them had died from their bodies exploding. Although Tang Zhang's strength was already extremely great, it was still unknown whether or not he would be able to pass through this crisis. Tian Chanzi's eyelids immediately drooped. The worry in his eyes was self-evident. Everyone retreat. Tian Chanzi waved his hand and gave the order. Whether or not Tang Zhang's pure yang energy had erupted, the truth would be revealed once they tested it out. The others began to retreat one after another. Most of them understood Tian Chanzi's intention. Tian Chanzi looked at Mu Hongyan, who was tightly holding Tang Zhang's hand, and warned, "I'll leave this to you. You have to figure out whether or not his pure yang energy has really erupted." Mu Hongyan raised her head and looked at the empty room. Then she looked at Tang Zhang in her arms and heavily nodded, "I understand." She was very clear about the heavy burden on her shoulders. If she could confirm that Tang Zhang's pure yang energy had erupted, then the most troublesome problem would be dispelling it. There was only one way, and it was not something she could do alone. Combined with the previous eruptions of pure yang energy, this one was especially strange and serious. Perhaps dispelling it would not be an easy matter. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so many Skywalkers in history who died because of this. She took a deep breath and gently undressed Tang Zhang. After a while, the two of them were naked. They were very familiar with this kind of thing, but now Tang Zhang was like a block of wood, so she had to lead everything. She blushed and quickly calmed her mind. Her fingers gently stroked every inch of Tang Zhang's skin. Although he was like a block of wood, his body's functions were not affected at all. She was no longer a 17 or 18-year-old girl. After overcoming the initial shyness, she became a lot bolder. The temperature in the room gradually rose, and a trace of strange aura filled the room. There was also a slight shameful sound, which was teasing Mu Hongyan's heartstrings. Her breath involuntarily quickened. But she didn't forget her task. She was keenly aware of a trace of change, and this change was getting more and more intense. In the end, she almost didn't need to spend any effort to sense it. Chapter 1629. Mu Hongyan was dumbfounded by the endless flow of pure yin energy. It was as if all the strength in her body had been sucked away as she lay limply on Tang Zhang's chest. She supported herself with her arms and climbed down from Tang Zhang's body. Her legs were weak and she staggered, almost falling to the ground. She patted her chest heavily a few times before she finally calmed down. She looked at Tang Zhang in bewilderment, and fear lingered in her heart. If I hadn't left, would the pure yin energy have been completely absorbed by him? She didn't dare to continue thinking about it, because if it was really as she thought, then her life would be in danger. She couldn't care less about her naked body as she stared at Tang Zhang. She was already sure of one thing, and that was that he really had erupted with pure yang energy. Although it looked different from before, in fact, there wasn't much change in essence. It was just that it was hidden by the appearance, so for a while, no one noticed it. What should she do? She couldn't help but frown as she looked at Tang Zhang with worry. After a long time, she finally recovered a bit of strength, but she didn't dare to test it out again. She quickly put on her clothes and also dressed Tang Zhang neatly. He was still like a piece of wood, allowing her to do as she pleased. She turned her head and gave him a deep look before resolutely walking out. Outside the room, many people crowded together and looked at her curiously. Her face was dignified as she said in a deep voice, "He really did erupt with pure yang energy." Ah! Cries of alarm rang out. Many people still had hope in their hearts, but after hearing this sentence, they knew that their hopes were dashed. The cruel reality was bloody in front of them. Didn't he also erupt with pure yang energy before? Once there is pure yin energy to balance it, he can turn danger into safety. Now you. Tang Dahai looked at Mu Hongyan and said. Mu Hongyan lowered her head and said embarrassedly, "My pure yin energy is not enough to balance his pure yang energy." Without waiting for the others to react, Tian Chanzi said in a deep voice, "She is right. Tang Zhang's situation this time is different from the past. He is at the final juncture. The pure yang energy that the 9-yang saint body has accumulated for 20 years has completely erupted. This isn't something that can be resolved with just a little bit of pure yin energy. If we act rashly, I'm afraid that the rescuer will suffer quite a bit of harm, so we can't be careless. Mu Hongyan nodded to herself, admitting that what Tian Chanzi said was true. If she hadn't stopped in time, she would have suffered a lot of injuries. As soon as he said this, everyone looked at Mu Hongyan. Seeing her expression of deep understanding, everyone immediately knew that Tian Chanzi was not lying. Immediately, all of them frowned, not knowing what to do. Tang Dehai was out of his wits as he worriedly asked, "Then what should we do?" Tian Chanzi muttered to himself for a while, then decisively said, "First call back the other girls and temporarily deal with it to save his life. As for the final solution, I'm afraid that it will fall on the Empyrean Fairy." The Empyrean Fairy had the 9-yin saint body, so this was the best way to balance Tang Zhang's 9-yang saint body. Naturally, Tian Chanzi thought of her first. Mu Hongyan's heart skipped a beat as she understood his thoughts. She worriedly said, "But the Empyrean Fairy's status is noble, so she might not agree." Tian Chanzi's lips curled into a meaningful smile and said, "Have you all forgotten what the Emperor of Heaven said? The Emperor of Heaven has the intention of bringing these two together. Once we agree to this, I believe that the Emperor of Heaven will definitely agree." The parents' orders, the matchmaker's words. As the Emperor of Heaven's daughter, the Empyrean Fairy will naturally not go against the Emperor of Heaven's wishes, so there will be no obstacles in this matter. Mu Hongyan was suddenly stunned as she instantly understood Tian Chanzi's words. It was indeed reasonable, and she could not help but feel a trace of sourness in her heart. But she immediately restrained this subtle thought. Her status was special and could not be compared to others. Although she was already by Tang Zhang's side, if she wanted a status, it would be extremely difficult. After all, not to mention the secular world's view, there was still Nana between the two of them. This was an insurmountable mountain. She was not sure how it would hurt Nana, so she would rather maintain the semi-public method. She did not need to fight for a status, but what about the others? None of the others were easy to deal with, and each and every one of them hung their hearts on Tang Zhang. Would they be willing to not have a status? Would they agree to just watch as this status was handed over to someone else? Mu Hongyan could not answer for all of them. Perhaps some would be willing, but there would definitely be some who would not. Then how would she decide? She was very smart, but she could not think of a solution. Tang Dehai did not have such thoughts. He immediately ordered someone to contact the other girls, and he hurriedly left to personally make the call. Tian Chanzi's eyes were like torches as he thoughtfully looked at Mu Hongyan. He patted her shoulder and said earnestly, "In this kind of life and death situation, we must sacrifice something in exchange for his life. I hope you can understand." Mu Hongyan's lips curled into a bitter smile as she said, "Of course I can understand, but the others may not. Don't worry, in order to save Tang Zhang, I believe they will be deeply righteous," Tian Chanzi said stubbornly. The phone was quickly connected to several girls. Originally, they were still immersed in the joy of the spring festival, but upon hearing the bad news, they were all shocked and their good mood was destroyed. Then, they used various methods to rush to the capital without stopping. Fang Shishir and Lu Qingmei were far away in ordinary balance. They had to cross more than half of the country to reach the capital. If they flew overnight, the speed would not be too fast, and it would be dangerous. Therefore, she decided to take an early morning plane to the capital. Yi Dingdang, Wu and Li Xiaotian were far away in Dianan, farther than Fang Shishir. They could only take a plane, and the only one left was Linger. In fact, no one told her. After her Spring Festival Gala debut, she declined other people's invitations and interviews, and then rushed home without stopping. She wanted to hear Tang Zhang's evaluation of her the most. The biggest reason why she went on the Spring Festival Gala was to let Tang Zhang personally watch her performance on TV. Unfortunately, Tang Zhang did not have time to take a look. Linger suddenly pushed open the door and saw Tang Zhang, who was surrounded in the middle of the crowd. She turned pale with fright and flew over, exclaiming, "Master, what happened to you?" Linger's body and mind were all tied to one person, and this person was Tang Zheng. If there was no Tang Zheng, she was afraid that she would not know who to stew and eat, let alone transform into a human and become a star. Everything she had was given to her by Tang Zheng, so she was naturally worried about him the most. "Linger, why are you back so early?" Mu Hongyan suppressed the grief in her heart and asked. Linger tightly grasped her master's hand and raised her head to look at Mu Hongyan. Her eyes were already red, and her tears were like pearls, falling down as she said, "How did master become like this?" Mu Hongyan faintly said, "His pure yang energy erupted." Chapter 1630. I will dissolve the pure yang energy for master. Seeing Linger making a solemn vow without any hesitation, everyone was shocked and looked at her blankly. In everyone's subconscious mind, they did not put Linger in the list of people who would dissolve the pure yang energy, so when they heard this, they were all at a loss. Linger anxiously asked, "Why, is there anything wrong?" "Master is already at a critical juncture, my life belongs to master, so I should do my part." The others did not know what to say. As a woman, Mu Hongyan looked at everyone and quickly pulled Linger's hand and whispered, "Linger, come with me." Saying that, she pulled her to the side and whispered to her. Everyone looked at this scene with mixed feelings, but when they saw Tang Zheng who was motionless on the bed, they all frowned. "Linger, do you know what this means?" Mu Hongyan found it hard to say. After all, in everyone's impression, Linger was as clear as water that flowed down from an ice mountain, without the slightest impurity. Telling her about the matters between men and women was really blasphemous to her. Mu Hongyan knew that this heavy burden could only be carried by herself, otherwise, with a room full of men, she could not tell a little girl such private matters. Linger stared at Mu Hongyan with her clear eyes, the corners of her mouth hooked up into a playful smile and said, "Sister Mu, what do you mean?" Mu Hongyan secretly sighed. This silly girl was too naive, taking the initiative to volunteer, but did not understand the meaning behind it. She was anxious in her heart, deliberating over her words for a long time before saying, "I am asking if you know what to do to dissolve the pure yang energy." "Do what?" "This." Mu Hongyan was stumped by the question. This kind of private matter was hard to say in broad daylight. Looking at Mu Hongyan's predicament, Linger covered her mouth and chuckled. Mu Hongyan's almond eyes widened. How could she not understand that she was being teased? Immediately, she was extremely embarrassed. Pretending to be angry, she said coquettishly, "Linger, you actually learned bad things and know how to tease me." "Sister Mu, I don't dare." Linger immediately retracted her smile and said with a serious face, "Sister Mu, don't treat me like a 3-year-old child. I have lived for hundreds of years. Although I have not been in human form for long, how can I not know anything in the entertainment circle? Of course, I know what to do to dissolve the pure yang energy." Returning to the main topic, Mu Hongyan put away her complicated thoughts and said in a deep voice, "Since you know what it means, are you still willing to do this?" Linger's expression was firm, not allowing for the slightest doubt, and said resolutely, "Of course, I am willing." Mu Hongyan was shocked by her decisiveness, and said in bewilderment, "But you have to be clear, this is not an act." "I know you have always remembered his kindness, but there are many ways to repay a debt. There is no need to do this. This is the most important thing to a woman." Linger turned her head to look at Tang Zheng, her expression fluctuating, and said, "Repay a debt of gratitude? I am indeed grateful to master. If not for him, I am afraid I would not be in this world, let alone have such a wonderful life." Mu Hongyan hurriedly nodded her head. This was what she meant. If she took this step to repay a debt of gratitude, it would be unfair to Linger. If Tang Zheng woke up and knew about this, he would not be able to accept it, and would even secretly blame himself. For the person she loved, Mu Hongyan naturally had the responsibility and obligation to avoid unnecessary tragedies. Linger's eyes gradually revealed deep affection, and the corner of her mouth rippled with a mysterious smile. She said, "At first, I was grateful to master, so I recognized him as my master. But later on, master always cared for me and loved me. I am also a woman, and I have a woman's heart. Moreover, seeing the other sisters and master together, I have a strong desire in my heart. I also want to be together with master. What? Mu Hongyan was shocked, and could not help but cry out. She was deeply shocked. She had never thought that such an innocent and cute girl would say such words. This was not an oath of eternal love, nor was it a solemn vow, but when it came from Ling-er's mouth, it seemed to have the power of 1,000 caddies, making people feel deep respect for her. When the others heard Mu Hongyan's cry of surprise, they all turned their heads in surprise, not knowing what the two were talking about to cause such a strong reaction. After a long time, Mu Hongyan calmed down the waves in her heart, and couldn't help but look at Ling-er in a new light. She hesitantly asked, Ling-er, you also like him? Ling-er's face revealed a girl's unique shyness, and she lowered her head, like a mimosa plant drooping down, making others want to love her tenderly, and gently nodded. Mu Hongyan faintly sighed, and turned her head to look at Tang Zheng, and said, this little brat really does not know what kind of good fortune he has cultivated in his previous life, to have so many beautiful women fall in love with him. Who knows how many men in the world would be jealous of him. Ling-er, then from now on, you are his woman? Mu Hongyan asked again. Ling-er raised her head, her face brimming with happiness and pride, and said, to be able to become master's woman, this is the most fortunate thing, and also the most glorious thing. Mu Hongyan was speechless, and couldn't think of a single word to refute. After mulling over it for a long time, she was finally convinced. Indeed, as Ling-er said, this was the greatest happiness and glory for a woman. As Tang Zheng's woman, she felt it the most deeply, and was also one of the people with the most right to speak. Although he had many romantic affairs, they were all from his heart, and he did not favor one and discriminate against another. Moreover, many times, it was the women who took the initiative, and he became the passive party. He was like a huge magnet, firmly attracting these women, crying for him, laughing for him, infatuated with him, and falling in love with him. Seeing Mu Hongyan not speaking for a long time, Ling-er asked, Big Sister Mu, am I right? Mu Hongyan's eyes also became firm, and she nodded heavily, you are right. Ling-er's mouth hooked up into a smile that was even more charming. Mu Hongyan once again held Ling-er's hand, and walked with firm steps towards Tang Zheng. When the others saw this, they all signaled with their eyes. Mu Hongyan lightly nodded, and everyone instantly understood. Ling-er had already steeled her heart, and was willing to sacrifice herself to save others. Tang Dehai was someone who had witnessed Ling-er's growth, and sincerely said, Ling-er, grandfather, I thank you. Ling-er revealed a smile, grandfather, I am willing to do this. In the future, if little Zheng dares to not treat you well, tell grandfather will support you. Tang Dehai wiped his eyes, and emotionally said. Ling-er nodded, and playfully said, okay, grandfather is really good. Tian Chanzi waved his hand, and said, everyone leave. Mu Hongyan also followed the crowd out. Suddenly, Ling-er bashfully said in a low voice, Big Sister Mu, can you stay? Mu Hongyan was stunned when she heard this. She turned her head and looked at her blankly. She didn't understand and asked, why should I stay? Ling-er bit her lips, hesitated for a long time, and said, I don't know anything, Big Sister Mu, can you teach me? To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Chapter 1631. Ling-er's words exposed her clear nature. Mu Hongyan was stunned for a moment before she finally understood what Ling-er's words meant. Immediately, her beautiful face was filled with spring, like a ripe apple. She was also a woman, so she was very clear about the fear and expectation of a woman when she was still young. She had no reason to refuse and slightly nodded. Everyone else had already left. In order to avoid embarrassment, everyone retreated out of the villa and waited from afar. Mu Hongyan turned into a caring big sister and gently exhorted, Ling-er, don't be too shy later. Women will experience their first time and it will be a little painful. Just bear with it for a while and it will be fine. Ling-er seemed to understand and nodded, I'm not afraid of pain. Looking at her delicate appearance, Mu Hongyan couldn't help but chuckle. Her fingers lifted the strands of hair by her ear and said, "Don't worry, I'm here for everything." Linger nodded in confusion. A piece of clothing slid down from Linger's body, revealing her graceful figure. Mu Hongyan's eyes revealed a look of admiration. As a woman, she had to admit that Linger was like a budding flower. Although it was already mature, it had not been plucked and was so tender that water could be pinched out. Her skin was snow white and did not lose its rosy color. Even Mu Hongyan felt a rush of excitement when she saw it. Linger was transformed from a 100-year-old ginseng and was the most perfect figure. Moreover, even if she did not exercise, her figure would still be in the most perfect state. This was really the golden ratio. If it was more or less, she would lose her beauty and charm. "Linger, you are so beautiful." Mu Hongyan could not hold back and her fingers gently slid across Linger's skin. Linger slightly trembled and her face was red as she said, "Big sister Mu, you are also very beautiful." Mu Hongyan had the unique charm of a mature woman, which was completely different from Linger's youth. However, Mu Hongyan was experienced, so she naturally admired Linger's youthful state. Linger took off her clothes, and not long after, they were completely naked. She tried her best to restrain the shyness in her heart as she gently bit her lips. Her snow-white teeth left 2 shallow teeth marks on her rosy lips. Mu Hongyan understood her feelings and comforted her softly, "Don't worry. Do as I say." Tang Zheng had already taken off his clothes and was lying on the bed like a log. Linger wanted to look but didn't dare to. She could only glance at him from the corner of her eyes. Mu Hongyan laughed involuntarily and said, "There are only a few of us here. If you want to look, just look openly." Linger was so embarrassed that her ears turned red as she said in a mosquito-like voice, "Big sister Mu, don't make fun of me. From now on, you are his woman. What can't you see? This is an open and above-board matter. It is a matter of course. Can't you look at me?" Mu Hongyan guided and tried her best to dispel Linger's fear of difficulties. She set an example and pretended to be natural and unrestrained as she looked at Tang Zheng. But when her gaze fell on Tang Zheng, her face couldn't help but turn red. Her mind was filled with images that were not suitable for children, and her breathing also became hurried. "Big sister Mu, what's wrong?" Linger asked with concern. Mu Hongyan took a deep breath as her chest heaved up and down. Only then did she suppress the restlessness in her heart and said with a trembling voice, "I'm fine. Let's begin." Linger was looking forward to it, but she was also at a loss as she followed Mu Hongyan's instructions. Everything seemed unfamiliar and even a little clumsy. But it was precisely this simplicity that made Mu Hongyan's heart palpitate. She secretly made up her mind as she glanced at Tang Zheng and spat, "If you dare to not treat Linger well in the future, I won't agree to it. See how I'll deal with you." She was deeply moved by Linger's spirit and sacrifice. Although Linger didn't have any experience, she was very smart and gradually understood the experience that Mu Hongyan imparted to her. Hiss. Linger sucked in a breath of cold air as her delicate nose wrinkled. Her eyes were like water, as if they could speak. Mu Hongyan looked at her and felt as if she had experienced it herself. Her heart clenched as she said, "If it hurts, stop for a while." Linger stubbornly shook her head. She took a deep breath and stubbornly said, "I'm fine." Then, she followed Mu Hongyan's legendary experience and followed the same pattern. She gradually understood the essence of it and that indescribably wonderful feeling. Mu Hongyan's face and ears turned red as her breathing involuntarily quickened. Especially when Linger's mouth couldn't help but let out a faint sound. It was as if there was magic that drilled into her heart and teased every cell, causing her heart to itch unbearably. "Linger, you've already learned it. Just do as you wish. I'll go out first." After she finished speaking, she didn't wait for Linger's reply. She didn't even dare to look back, much less take another look as she flew away. Linger fell into a wonderful state. She forgot everything and didn't have time to pay attention to Mu Hongyan's departure. She felt a powerful pure yang energy enter her body. Then, her pure yin energy also continuously flowed into Tang Zheng's body. She was formed from ginseng, so this feeling was much clearer than other people. Especially after the pure yang energy settled in her body and fused with her jin qi. Then, her jin qi surged like a torrential river. This also has the effect of increasing power. She was very smart and immediately understood that this was a mutually beneficial process. Not only was her pure yin energy useful to her master, but his pure yang energy also had a great effect on her. The pure yang energy and pure yin energy interacted and fused within the two people's bodies. Two auras slowly rose from the top of their heads, one black and one white, one yin and one yang. They intertwined and intertwined above their heads. You had me, I had you, just like two people on a bed. This was a great harmony that had never been seen before. It even surpassed Tang Zheng's previous state of mind when he did this. That was because Linger had a special constitution. Of course, it was also because Tang Zheng's strength had reached the peak of perfection. It was far from what it was in the past. When all these factors were combined, it created this wonderful and complex change. More and more auras rose from the top of their heads. The yin and yang auras also increased. They were like two clouds, constantly tumbling and changing, faintly emitting the sound of wind and thunder. Linger was immersed in this wonderful state and didn't notice the strange phenomenon above her head. She only instinctively let her body rise and fall, like a small boat in the middle of the sea, undulating. However, the jin qi in her body continued to rise. It broke through one restriction after another, breaking through a threshold. She was wild with joy. She had never experienced such a feeling of cultivation rapidly rising. She felt that she was too blessed. This wasn't helping her master, but rather her master was helping her. How was this a sacrifice? This was a great honor. At this time, her respect for her master was like a torrential river. It was indescribable. This feeling of rising continued. The yin and yang auras above her head also changed more and more violently. Finally, after the two auras completely fused, they gradually separated and turned into a yin and yang fish. This was the harmony of yin and yang. For the latest novel updates, please visit the website. Chapter 1632. Ah! Suddenly, Ling-Er let out a delicate cry. She straightened her body, revealing her beautiful figure. Then, she stopped moving. The wind stopped and the rain stopped. Bang! The yin-yang fish dissipated and split into two. The yin qi entered Tang Zheng's body, while the yang qi completely fell from Ling-Er's head. Ling-Er suddenly opened her eyes, which were filled with joy. Her cultivation had broken through a huge threshold and reached the first stage of the soul formation realm. Ling-Er was transformed from ginseng, so her cultivation speed was much faster than other people's. Furthermore, she was quite intelligent and didn't relax. She had been working hard on her cultivation. Therefore, she had broken through to the first stage of the Yuanyin realm, but she never expected that she could break through 9 stages in one go. It was simply a miracle. Before she could slowly appreciate this joy, her gaze immediately fell on Tang Zheng's body. Compared to her own gains, she was more concerned about her master's safety. When her gaze fell on Tang Zheng's body, she discovered that his eyes were still closed. Her heart immediately felt as if it was being grabbed. Her face was filled with disappointment, but she suddenly heard a voice in her heart. Ling-Er. Master. She was overjoyed. Her eyes glowed as she asked, Master, are you awake? However, when she looked at Tang Zheng, she realized that his eyes were still closed. She couldn't help but be stunned. Could it be that she was hallucinating? No, that was her master's voice. How could she have heard wrongly? Ling-Er, I'm in your heart. Tang Zheng's voice sounded again, but it didn't enter her ears. Instead, it sounded directly in her heart. She immediately came to a realization. She was actually connected to her master's heart. Master, how could this be? Ling-Er asked in confusion. I don't know either. Perhaps it's because of what we did just now. Master, you know everything. Ling lowered her head. Although Tang Zhang's eyes were still closed, she didn't dare to look at him. Her face was red all the way to her neck. Linger, thank you. Tang Zhang said gratefully. His tone was complicated, as if he didn't expect Ling to make such a big sacrifice for him. Master. Hearing this, Linger's heart surged and her emotions fluctuated. She said, I'm willing to do this. It's my honor. Silly Linger. Tang Zhang hesitated for a while and sighed. Ling Er isn't stupid at all. Ling Er is very smart. Ling Er said with a sweet and happy smile. After a pause, Ling Er hurriedly asked, Master, what happened to you? My pure yang energy is about to erupt. It's currently brewing and will soon erupt completely. Fortunately, you saved me and resolved my pure yang energy. Otherwise, I would really be in danger. Tang Zheng replied. Although he had fallen into a deep sleep, it was different this time. In the past, he was muddle-headed, but now his consciousness was very clear. Previously, his consciousness was completely sealed and he couldn't sense or communicate with the outside world. However, ever since he and Linger reached a great harmony, everything changed. Not only could he communicate with Linger, but he could also sense the outside world. However, he had no way to communicate with others. Currently, he could only communicate with Linger alone. However, this also solved a big problem. At least he wasn't blind and had a way to find a solution. Linger, I will definitely treat you well in the future. Tang Zheng promised. As a man, he dared to take responsibility for what he did. Since it had already happened, he should take responsibility and not avoid it. Linger's mouth revealed a charming and happy smile as she gently said, Master, I will also serve you well. After tasting human nature for the first time, her every movement had a different kind of charm that made people's hearts palpitate. Tang Zheng's heart couldn't help but violently beat. He thought to himself that he hadn't realized before that Linger had already grown into such a beautiful young lady. What virtue did he have to be able to make her fall in love with him? If he dared to not take responsibility, even the heavens wouldn't tolerate it. Master, when can you recover? Linger naturally didn't know about Tang Zheng's complicated thoughts and hurriedly asked the most important question. Tang Zheng regretfully said, I'm afraid I can only maintain this state for the time being. I will need your help before I can communicate with the outside world. This is Linger's honor. Master, I believe you will get better very soon. Linger, put on our clothes first and then let the others come in. I have something important to tell them. Tang Zheng was very clear that he was racing against the god of death. He had to race against time. If he was slightly careless, the pure yang energy would completely erupt and then he would fall into a state of eternal damnation. Linger hurriedly climbed down from his body, but her legs were weak. She staggered and almost fell to the ground. She said in a slightly embarrassed manner, Master, I'm too stupid. Linger is the smartest. She's not stupid. Tang Zheng comforted her. Linger happily laughed and hurriedly dressed the two of them. Looking at the neatly dressed master, she revealed a very gratified expression. She was like a newly married wife who had dressed her husband properly. That kind of pride and arrogance was overflowing in her words. When the others saw Linger walk out, no one revealed a frivolous expression. Instead, they all looked at her with incomparable respect. Of course, there was no lack of anticipation in their eyes. Master wants everyone to go in. Linger said. What? Is he awake? Everyone was shocked. They hurriedly pushed the door open and entered, but they still saw Tang Zheng lying on the bed like a block of wood. Master has not woken up, but he is already connected to me and can communicate freely. Linger explained. Everyone was enlightened, but they also felt that it was magical. Tang Zheng and Linger were connected, especially Mu Hongyan. She looked left and right. What she could not do, Linger had done. However, she was not jealous. Instead, she was sincerely gratified. Linger had paid so much. If she did not gain anything, then it would really be disappointing. Linger walked to Tang Zheng's side and looked at him deeply. She said to everyone, Master said that his pure yang energy has not completely erupted, but is in the process of brewing. However, as for when it will erupt, he does not have a definite time. But there is no doubt that this time will not be long. He is already very dangerous. After repeating Tang Zheng's words, Linger's expression became dignified. Everyone had different expressions, but without exception, their faces were gloomy. Tian Chanzi said in a deep voice, Linger, quickly tell him that Shishir and the others will be back soon. Then, they will dissolve his pure yang energy. Linger shook her head and said, Master said that this is not enough. This time is different from the past. They may not be able to dissolve his pure yang energy. We have also sent people to find the Empyrean fairy. Mu Hongyan quickly added. Linger still shook her head. Master said that we cannot completely pin our hopes on the Empyrean fairy. Moreover, he does not have much time left. If the Empyrean fairy is not found, then he will be in danger. So, we must think of another way. Then what can we do? Everyone looked at her with burning eyes. Chapter 1633. Hearing this, everyone was overjoyed. They had never expected that Tang Zheng had already found a way. This was really a pleasant surprise. Everyone hurriedly urged Linger to see what kind of method it was. After Linger received Tang Zheng's instructions, she slowly said, All living things under the heavens are solemn, and the sun is illustrious. Solemnity surpasses the heavens and illustrious surpasses the earth. In short, extreme yin gives birth to yang, and extreme yang gives birth to yin. The Empyrean fairy had used this principle to survive the danger of the 9 yin saint body. She nourished herself in the place of extreme yin, and extreme yin gave birth to yang, thus escaping the disaster. Therefore, by the same principle, we must find a place of extreme yang and let Tang Zheng nourish himself there. Extreme yang gives birth to yin, and there might be a chance of survival. Linger was confused as she repeated Tang Zheng's words. Many people were also confused as they did not understand what was going on. Tian Chanzi understood immediately, and his eyes gradually lit up. He clapped his hands and praised, Good, you are really smart. You even thought of this method. Seeing this, the others asked, Tian Chanzi, is this method really feasible? They were not completely confident. With their cultivation and knowledge, they were not able to figure out the mystery. Tian Chanzi, on the other hand, had already begun to see the door. Although his knowledge was not as deep as Tang Zheng's, after such a breakthrough, it was as if the clouds had been lifted. Tian Chanzi nodded seriously and sighed in disappointment. If there is any feasible method, this method may be one of them. It is worth a try. Moreover, this is his own wish, and we must respect his choice. Then where is the place of extreme yang? Mu Hongyan asked. This. Tian Chanzi was in a dilemma. He racked his brains, but he did not know where the place of extreme yang was. The witch tribe elder recalled the holy land of the tribe. Even Xiao Bai was born in the holy land. Could it be that it was a place of extreme yang? Unfortunately, that place had been completely destroyed. Everyone was at a loss of what to do. Linger said slowly, The mystery is in what I said just now. It is so solemn that it is beyond the heavens. This is referring to a place of extreme yin. The place of extreme yin that we found back then was such a place. And the place of extreme yin is in the gate of heaven, which fits the mystery of this sentence. Everyone was enlightened. No wonder this sentence sounded so wise and profound. It turned out that it was so profound. Tian Chanzi couldn't help but ask curiously, Linger, you asked him where he got this sentence from. Why is it that the more I think about it, the more I feel that it's not that simple? Linger blinked and replied, Master, what you said was the original words in the heavenly book. Hiss. " Everyone gasped. So it was the original words of the heavenly book. No wonder it contained so much mystery. Enchanting was deep in thought as he muttered to himself, no wonder the Empyrean fairy knew about the method of generating yang through En Extreme. It turns out that everything was recorded in the tomes of Arcane. Heaven and earth understood the tomes of Arcane, so it's not surprising that they knew about this method. Ordinary people definitely wouldn't be able to think of such a wonderful method. Continued, Earth refers to the land of extreme yang. It's not in the sky, but on the ground. Moreover, it's in the deepest part of the earth. This is the core of the earth, which is also the land of extreme yang. Revealed the riddle for everyone. Everyone was enlightened, but they didn't feel relaxed at all. This sentence was easy to say, but how difficult was it to do? The earth's core. This seemed to be a simple word, but was it easy to reach that place? Of course it wasn't easy. Even if it was possible, it was still unknown. Mu Hongyan clenched her teeth and said resolutely, now that science and technology have advanced, it's not necessarily impossible to reach the Earth's core. I'll go find the world's most powerful technology. We must reach the Earth's core. Enchanting was deep in thought and said, I'm afraid it doesn't need to be as complicated as you make it out to be. Since this brat dares to say it, he must have a way. Let's hear him out for now. Revealed a smile and said, Master said that Senior Enchanting is very powerful. He actually guessed his thoughts. He's simply a roundworm in his stomach. Covered her mouth and giggled at the end. Enchanting was greatly embarrassed. He glared hatefully at Tang Zheng and said, Brat, your life is already hanging by a thread, and you still have the mood to make fun of me? Humph. Mu Hongyan hurriedly asked, quickly ask him what method he has. Everyone's hearts were in suspense. They were far more anxious than Tang Zheng, the person involved. Quickly put away her smile and said seriously, Master said that there's no need to go through the trouble of relying on high technology. He already has a method, and the method is on the Tree of Life. Tree of Life? Everyone was completely confused. What did this have to do with the Tree of Life? The Tree of Life's roots extend in all directions and directly reach the Earth's core. So, from the roots of the Tree of Life down, you will successfully reach the destination. Hearing this wonderful idea, everyone was shocked. They were impressed by Tang Zheng's imagination. The others definitely wouldn't have thought of this. This was because they didn't know much about the Tree of Life. They only knew that the Tree of Life could improve the spiritual energy of heaven and earth and was even related to a world. However, they definitely didn't know that the roots of the Tree of Life could actually reach the Earth's core. However, this wasn't a problem for Tang Zheng. This was because he knew the Tree of Life too well. Perhaps he didn't know much about the Tree of Life in the human world, but he knew enough about the Tree of Life in the heaven realm. He even witnessed the growth of the Tree of Life. In addition, with just a thought, he knew the Tree of Life in the heaven realm like the back of his hand. It was naturally not difficult for him to deduce the Tree of Life in the human world. Moreover, when the Tree of Life in the human world sprouted, he was also a witness. Naturally, he had a deeper understanding and understanding. Silence. Everyone opened their eyes wide and looked at Tang Zheng in shock. Finally, Enchanting clapped his hands and said with joy, Then what are we waiting for? Let's go immediately. Aren't we waiting for the others? Mu Hongyan asked. Not for the time being. We will go to the Tree of Life first and let the others go to the Tree of Life as well. In addition, we can't stop searching for the Empyrean fairy. We still have to find her. Enchanting said firmly. He didn't say the second half of his sentence, which was that he wasn't sure if Tang Zheng's method would work. Just in case, it was always good to prepare a few more methods. Immediately, the villa was in chaos again. Everyone hurriedly prepared. Although the powerful enemies in the human world had been eliminated, there were occasionally fish that escaped the net, which was nothing to worry about. However, Tang Zheng was too weak now. Just in case, they had to be fully prepared. Therefore, they had to mobilize a lot of people to go to the Tree of Life this time and protect Tang Zheng in all aspects. Chapter 1634. Hearing this, everyone was overjoyed. They had never expected that Tang Zheng had already thought of a way. This was really a pleasant surprise. Everyone hurriedly urged Linger to see what this method was. Linger received Tang Zheng's instructions and said slowly, "Everything in the world is solemn, and Yang is brilliant. The solemnity is beyond the heavens, and the brilliance is beyond the earth. When the two come together, things are born. In short, extreme yin produces yang, and extreme yang produces yin." The Empyrean fairy had used this principle to survive the danger of the 9 yin saint body. She nourished herself in a place with extreme yin, and extreme yin produces yang, thus escaping the disaster. Therefore, by the same principle, we must find a place with extreme yang and let Tang Zheng nourish himself there. Extreme yang produces yin, and there might be a chance of survival. Linger was confused as she repeated Tang Zheng's words. Many people were also confused as they did not understand what was going on. However, Heaven Monk immediately understood. His eyes gradually lit up, he clapped his hands and praised, "Good, you brat are really smart, you even thought of this method." When the others saw this, they asked, "Tian Chanzi, is this method really feasible?" They were not completely confident. With their cultivation and knowledge, they were not able to figure out the mystery. Tian Chanzi had already begun to understand. Although he was not as knowledgeable as Tang Zheng, after this breakthrough, it was as if the clouds had been lifted. Heaven Monk nodded his head seriously, and sighed in disappointment. If there is any other feasible method, then this method might be one of them, and it is worth a try. Moreover, this is his own wish, and we must respect his choice. Then where is the place with extreme yang? Mu Hongyan asked. This. Tian Chanzi was in a dilemma. He racked his brains and did not know where the place with extreme yang was. The witch tribe elder recalled the Holy Land in the tribe. Even Xiao Bai was born in the Holy Land. Could it be that it was a place with extreme yang? Unfortunately, that place had been completely destroyed. Everyone was at a loss of what to do. Linger said slowly, "The mystery is in what I said just now. It is so solemn that it is beyond the heavens. This is referring to a place of extreme yin. The place of extreme yin that we found back then was such a place. And the place of extreme yin is in the gate of heaven, which fits the mystery of this sentence." Everyone was enlightened. No wonder this sentence sounded so wise and profound. It turned out that it was so profound. Tian Chanzi couldn't help but ask curiously, "Linger, you asked him where he got this sentence from. Why is it that the more I think about it, the more I feel that it's not that simple?" Linger blinked and replied, "Master, what you said was the original words in the heavenly book." Hiss. Everyone gasped. So it was the original words of the heavenly book. No wonder it contained so much mystery. Tian Chanzi was deep in thought as he muttered to himself, "No wonder the Empyrean fairy knew about the method of generating yang through yin extreme. It turns out that everything was recorded in the tomes of arcane. Heaven and earth understood the tomes of arcane, so it's not surprising that they knew about this method. Ordinary people definitely wouldn't be able to think of such a wonderful method." Linger continued, "This is the place of extreme yang. It's not in the sky, but on the ground. Moreover, it's in the deepest part of the earth. This is the core of the earth, which is also the place of extreme yang." Linger revealed the riddle for everyone. Everyone was enlightened, but they didn't feel relaxed at all. This sentence was easy to say, but how difficult was it to do? The core of the earth. This seemed like a simple word, but was it easy to reach that place? Of course it wasn't easy. It was even unknown if it was possible. Mu Hongyan clenched her teeth and said resolutely, "Now that science and technology are advanced, it's not impossible to reach the core of the earth. I'll go find the most powerful technology in the world. We must reach the core of the earth." Tian Chanzi was deep in thought and said, "I'm afraid it doesn't need to be as complicated as you make it out to be. Since this brat dares to say it, he must have a way. Let's hear him out for now. Ling revealed a smile and said, Master said that Senior Tianchanzi is very powerful. He actually guessed his thoughts. He's like a roundworm in his stomach. At the end, Ling covered her mouth and chuckled. Tianchanzi was greatly embarrassed. He glared hatefully at Tang Zheng and said, Brat, your life is already hanging by a thread, and you're still in the mood to make fun of me? Humph. Mu Hongyan hurriedly asked, Ling, quickly ask him what method he has. Everyone's hearts were in suspense. They were far more anxious than Tang Zheng, the person involved. Ling quickly put away her smile and said seriously, Master said that there's no need to go through the trouble of using technology. He already has a method, and the method is on the Tree of Life. Tree of Life? Everyone was completely confused. What did this have to do with the Tree of Life? The roots of the Tree of Life extend in all directions and directly reach the core of the earth. So, from the roots of the Tree of Life down, you will successfully reach your destination. Hearing this ingenious idea, everyone was shocked. They were impressed by Tang Zheng's imagination. Others would never have thought of this. This was because they didn't know much about the Tree of Life. They only knew that the Tree of Life could improve the spiritual energy of heaven and earth and was even related to a world. However, they definitely didn't know that the roots of the Tree of Life could actually reach the core of the earth. However, this wasn't a problem for Tang Zheng. This was because he knew the Tree of Life too well. Perhaps he didn't know much about the Tree of Life in the human world, but he knew enough about the Tree of Life in the heaven realm. He even witnessed the growth of the Tree of Life. In addition, with just a thought, he knew the Tree of Life in the heaven realm like the back of his hand. Naturally, it wasn't difficult for him to deduce the Tree of Life in the human world. Moreover, when the Tree of Life in the human world sprouted, he was also a witness. Naturally, he had a deeper understanding. Silence. Everyone widened their eyes and looked at Tang Zheng in shock. Finally, Tianchanzi clapped his hands and said happily, Then what are we waiting for? Let's set off immediately. Aren't we waiting for the others? Mu Hongyan asked. Not for the time being. Let's go to the Tree of Life first and let the others go directly to the Tree of Life. In addition, we can't stop searching for the Empyrean Fairy. We still have to find her. Tianchanzi said firmly. He didn't say the second half of his sentence, which was that he wasn't sure if Tang Zheng's method would work. Just in case, it was always good to prepare a few more methods. Suddenly, the villa was in chaos again. Everyone hurriedly prepared. Although the powerful enemies in the human world had been eliminated, the occasional fish that escaped the net was nothing to worry about. But now, Tang Zheng was too weak. Just in case, they had to be fully prepared. Therefore, this time, they had to mobilize a lot of people to go to the Tree of Life and protect Tang Zheng in all aspects. The sky turned white. On the first day of the new year, before the sun had risen, a group of people had already soared into the sky from the villa. In an instant, the sky above the villa was filled with people. Riding on their magic weapons, they flew towards the northwest with whooshing sounds. To read a novel, please visit Chapter 1635. The northwest was no longer a desert, but an endless oasis. The changes were earth-shattering, and this was all thanks to the Tree of Life. From afar, the Tree of Life was like a giant umbrella that grew out of the ground, covering the sky and the earth. It was a spectacular sight. This oasis had long been sealed off by the authorities to prevent humans from approaching. Although the authorities also wanted to study the Tree of Life, after experiencing a few bumps, they tacitly stopped coveting the Tree of Life. Everyone landed in front of the Tree of Life. When they looked up, they suddenly felt that they were insignificant, like ants. Tianchanzi sighed with emotion. The Tree of Life has grown to this point. It is no longer something that can be destroyed just because someone wants to. Back then, the Tree of Life was destroyed by the combined power of the ghost realm, not by a single person. Now, the tree of life had fully matured and had the power to protect itself. The witch clan quickly took action, establishing a protective circle around the periphery to guard against the enemy. Tang Zheng was carried by Ling Er, accompanied by Tian Chanzi, and walked step by step towards the tree of life. As for Mu Hongyan, she did not follow and stayed in the capital to take care of the overall situation. The three of them walked to the trunk of the tree of life. Tian Chanzi pointed at the tree of life and said, "The roots of the tree of life are developed. How can we determine which one will reach the core of the earth, and how can we smoothly go down?" Ling had already been instructed by her master, and spoke with assurance. Master said that the tree of life only has one main root that reaches the core of the earth, and it is not difficult to find this main root. After Ling finished walking, she directly squatted down and inserted her arms into the soil. Immediately, her arms extended infinitely, spreading into the depths of the soil. Ling was originally transformed from ginseng, and the soil was the soil that nourished her growth. The soil to her was like water to a fish, allowing her to use it wantonly. After a while, her fingers touched a root. This root was much smaller than the root next to it, and was very easy to overlook. If not for Tang Zheng's guidance, she definitely would not have found it. When Tang Zheng understood the tree of life, he realized that the main root of the tree of life was not the seemingly thick root system, but a small root system hidden within the large root system. This was the main root that extended all the way to the core of the earth. Ling Er looked up at Tian Chanzi and said with a smile, "I found the main root." Tian Chanzi looked at her in surprise. With his ability, he might not be able to find it so quickly. He quickly asked, "Then how do we go down?" "I have an idea too." Ling Er pointed her finger, and a mass of green light enveloped Tang Zheng. It was as if he was in a bubble. Ling Er transformed into her original form, a small ginseng shrouded in a faint halo. "I'll take Master down." Tian Chanzi looked at Ling Er, then at Tang Zheng, and said, "I'll go with you." "This is very deep," Ling Er reminded. Tian Chanzi laughed dryly and said, "Do you think I'm afraid? Don't worry, I won't drag you down." "Oh." Ling Er did not refuse and said, "Then let's go down quickly." After saying this, one of her roots extended out and wrapped around Tang Zheng. With a whoosh, they drilled into the soil and disappeared. How could Tian Chanzi be willing to fall behind? His whole body lit up with a ray of light, and with a boom, he smashed a large hole in the ground and disappeared without a trace. This hole went all the way down, just like a pangolin burrowing into the ground. Compared to Ling Er's method, this was clearly inferior. This was where Ling Er excelled. She was transformed from ginseng, so this was like returning to her home, like a fish back in water. How could Tian Chanzi compare? Underground, one of Ling Er's roots wrapped around the tree of life. Immediately, a majestic spiritual energy of heaven and earth entered her body, benefiting her greatly. Tian Chanzi was also wrapped in a ball of light. He opened his eyes wide and saw the situation underground clearly. He also saw the developed roots of the tree of life, which were inextricably linked. Being in the middle of it was like being in a maze. Seeing that Ling Er chose such a thin root, Tian Chanzi was shocked and asked, "This is the main root you chose?" "I didn't choose it, but Master did." Ling Er corrected him. Tian Chanzi raised his beard and said, "Nonsense, how can such a root be the main root? For such a towering tree like the tree of life, the main root must be the thickest one. It must be that one." Tian Chanzi turned his head and stared at the thickest root, making a solemn vow. Ling Er firmly believed in Tang Zheng's choice and retorted, "I believe in Master. If Master says this root is the main root, then it must be this one." Tian Chanzi rolled his eyes and muttered, "Truly hopeless. Each and every one of them is fooling around." After a slight pause, Tian Chanzi said, "Then let's wait and see. Let's see who made the right choice." Tian Chanzi stared at the main route he chose and quickly dived down with Ling Er. This was much more difficult than diving, especially the deeper they went, the more complicated the inextricably linked routes became. Tian Chanzi had to constantly avoid these complicated routes, turning left and right, constantly shuttling back and forth. On the other hand, Tang Zheng was much more relaxed. The mass of green light that wrapped around him seemed to have great magical power. Wherever it went, it directly penetrated the soil, effortlessly. Tian Chanzi was envious, jealous, and hateful. Why didn't he have such good treatment? Linger seemed to see through his thoughts and explained, "My skills can only ensure master's safety." "So, Senior Tian Chanzi, I'm sorry." Tian Chanzi pretended to be natural and unrestrained, and said without a care, "How can such a small problem be difficult for me? I'm not that brat, like a vegetable who can't take care of himself." Linger was relieved and said, "That's good. Let's continue forward." Linger quickly led the way. That small root seemed to have no end, but Tian Chanzi walked to the end because that thick root suddenly stopped. It didn't shrink in the slightest, as if it suddenly broke off, and suddenly disappeared. Tian Chanzi couldn't help but stop, looking at this scene in disbelief. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry, and as if he was possessed, he said to himself, "How come it's gone? This is too sudden." Linger pursed her lips and chuckled, as if she had already expected all of this. She said without any surprise, "Senior, I'm right. This is Master's instructions, how could it be wrong?" Tian Chanzi blew his beard and glared, and said with a grunt, "That brat was right for once. He simply didn't choose any other routes, so as to avoid losing face again." Losing face in front of Linger really didn't feel good. "Then I'll lead the way in front. If Senior is tired, please understand that my cultivation is still weak and my speed is slow." Linger said with incomparable sincerity, and then led Tang Jing along the small route, quickly advancing towards the earth's core. Tian Chanzi rolled his eyes, and criticized in his heart, "Little girl, your speed is slow. I really don't know what's fast. This is underground, not flat ground. If I didn't use all my skills, I wouldn't be able to keep up with you." To read a novel without mistakes, please visit Chapter 1636. Linger quickly moved forward, and a blazing aura gradually attacked them. Tian Chanzi was keenly aware of it, and hurriedly reminded, "Linger, the Earth's core is not far away." Linger said seriously, "I know, the main root of the tree of life extends all the way to the Earth's core. I have already sensed the aura of the Earth's core from the main root." Tian Chanzi raised his head and glanced. He did not know how far away they were from the surface, and even his divine sense could not extend so far. In the past, he had never thought that he would one day reach the Earth's core. After all, it was not a good place. Just the blazing heat of the Earth's core alone was enough to make him suffer. "Be careful later." Tian Chanzi did not forget to warn. Linger's original ginseng body was also like a person, but a miniature version. She hurriedly nodded and said, "I know, Senior." After saying that, her roots wrapped even tighter around Tang Zheng, pulling him to her side and moving down step by step. Crash! The sound of rolling waves sounded, like the roar of a ferocious beast, but also like the explosion of thunder. It was breathtaking. "What's that sound?" Tian Chanzi's heart trembled, and he hurriedly asked. Linger did not answer, and like pushing away the clouds, she directly penetrated through the last layer of soil. Her eyes suddenly opened up, and a fiery red light illuminated her eyes. Tian Chanzi also followed closely behind, drilling a big hole in the last obstacle. With a plop, a rock fell from the hole. Gulp! A bubble appeared, and then the rock disappeared without a trace, melted into magma. But no one cared about all this. Tian Chanzi and Linger had already been deeply attracted and shocked by the scene in front of them. There was an endless lake filled with fiery red magma, and there was also a fountain of magma bubbling up in the middle of the lake, producing bubbles. After bursting with a gurgling sound, it emitted a blazing aura, filling this small space. The intense heat melted the surrounding rock walls, and the rock walls became as soft as chocolate. This hell-like scene was truly frightening, causing one's heart to involuntarily clench. But what was even more inconceivable was that a slender root extended down from the top of this space, straight into the pool, and was completely submerged by the fiery red magma. However, the strange thing was that the magma, which was so hot that even steel and rock could not melt in an instant, did not melt the main root of the tree of life. This main root seemed to have a mysterious magic power. It safely extended into the magma and seemed to be absorbing the nutrients within. Specks of red light climbed up the main root and quickly passed through the main root to every root of the tree of life. Linger was particularly sensitive to this, especially when one of her roots was wrapped around the main root. She could clearly feel a surge of blazing energy flowing through the main root. This energy was extremely pure. Even though she was only separated by a layer, she could feel how extraordinary this energy was. After a long time, the two finally recovered from their shock. Tian Chanzi exclaimed, "So the Earth's core is actually like this." Linger was also filled with emotion. "Yes, it's really spectacular." Quickly asked that kid, "What should we do next?" Tian Chanzi urged. Linger made an "oh" sound, and quickly asked Tang Zheng, "Master, what should we do next?" Although Tang Zheng seemed to be unconscious, his divine sense also saw the scene of the Earth's core. His heart was unable to calm down for a long time, and he was also a little doubtful about the feasibility of his method. But in the end, he still defeated the trace of fear in his heart. Since it was recorded in the heavenly book, it definitely could not be wrong. Moreover, this was the only way now. He could only treat a dead horse as a living horse. Tang Zheng calmly instructed, "Put me in the Earth's core." "What? Put it in the Earth's core?" Linger screamed. She could not believe that Tang Zheng would actually say such a thing. Tian Chanzi was also shocked, and shouted, "The Earth's core, could it be that you put it in the magma?" After saying that, Tian Chanzi could not help but shiver in his heart. Although Tian Chanzi admitted that Tang Zheng's physical body was extremely strong because he had cultivated the chaotic Vajra spell, it was still the magma from the Earth's core. It was even hotter than a volcanic eruption. Could he withstand it? Linger was also worried, and advised while trembling with fear, "Master, you will be injured like this." Tang Zheng had already made up his mind. How could he change his mind so easily? He said indifferently, "Linger, don't worry, I know what I'm doing. How could I joke around with my life?" Hearing his solemn vow, Linger's heart wavered. She had always had close to blind trust and worship for Tang Zheng, so after thinking for a bit, she believed Tang Zheng's words. "All right, then master, be careful." With that, Linger slowly placed Tang Zheng into the boiling lake. Assistant. "Linger, what are you doing?" This scene shocked Tian Chanzi. He did not care about the blazing high temperature and hurriedly stopped Linger, stopping Tang Zheng. Linger patiently explained, "Senior, this is master's decision, I have to follow his orders." "What kind of stupid decision is this?" "He's playing around with his life. He's used to messing around, so you should follow his lead." Tian Chanzi had stubbornly followed them down, just in case. He did not expect that he had really made the right choice. If he had really allowed these two youngsters to mess around, then in the end, not even Tang Zheng's corpse would be left. Tian Chanzi had promised to protect Tang Zheng, so how could he just sit by and watch this kind of thing happen, turning a blind eye? Linger did not expect Tian Chanzi to care so much about Tang Zheng, so she was stubborn and did not know what to do for a moment. Tang Zheng could not directly communicate with Tian Chanzi, so he was anxious and said to Linger, "Tell him that I've already cultivated the indestructible body, so I won't die so easily. Tell him not to worry." Linger immediately passed on the message, but Tian Chanzi did not let them go and said fiercely, "Kid, you can't mess around. Our people have already gone to find the Empyrean fairy, and she'll be back soon. At that time, your yin and yang will be harmonized, and everything will be fine, right? Why take this risk?" Tang Zheng knew that Tian Chanzi was worried about him and was moved, but he still firmly said, "It's better to rely on yourself than on others. I believe in my own judgment." Tian Chanzi stared at Tang Zheng with shining eyes. Although his eyes were closed, Tian Chanzi was still defeated and resentfully let them go. "In this world, there really isn't anyone who messes around like you." Linger sighed in relief and quickly sent Tang Zheng into the magma. Boom, boom, boom. Suddenly, the magma surged like a huge wave in the sea. The magma hit the surrounding walls, giving rise to a series of blue smoke and sizzling sounds. This lake full of magma underwent an unimaginable change, as if it had come alive in an instant. To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Chapter 1637. When Tian Chanzi and Linger saw this scene, they subconsciously stopped what they were doing and stared blankly at the churning magma. What's going on? Tian Chanzi muttered to himself. Linger was confused and said, I don't know either. As soon as her voice fell, the main root of the tree of life began to shake violently. A blazing feeling came from the main root, causing one's heart to tremble. Shwa! The two of them looked at the shaking main root at the same time. Tian Chanzi's heart moved and he shouted, Be careful. Voila! Raging waves rose up from the lake and the fiery red magma soared into the sky. A big guy flew out of the magma and fiercely pounced at the two of them. What is that? The two of them trembled and reacted at the same time. Even though Linger's body was small, she was extremely nimble and had a lot of strength. She wrapped around Tang Zheng and flew to the side with a soap sound, dodging this fierce attack. Shwa! Tian Chanzi did not retreat. He unsheathed his treasure sword and directly slashed out with the Taie sword. Pung! With a loud sound, the Taie sword flew back into Tian Chanzi's hand. The thing wrapped in magma was also stunned in midair and stopped. However, Tian Chanzi and Linger clearly saw this thing. It was actually a strange beast, its whole body burning with raging flames. These flames were like its hair, awe-inspiring. The magma slid down from its body, but it did not hurt it at all. It was like rain falling from a person's body. What is this? Linger asked curiously. Tian Chanzi's eyes widened, as if his eyeballs were about to pop out. He stared at the strange beast without blinking, his eyes full of disbelief. Hearing Linger's question, he seemed to wake up from a dream. He was so scared that he shivered and screamed, Fire Qilin. Is this the legendary Fire Qilin? Tian Chanzi had heard of the legend of the fire unicorn, but he had only heard of its name and had never seen it in person. He thought that it was a mythical beast made up from nothing. Who would have thought that there really was a Fire Qilin in this world? It was just that it was hidden in the Earth's core. Normal people would never have the chance to see it. However, Linger had never heard of this name before. She muttered in bewilderment, Fire Qilin, it seems to be very powerful. Tian Chanzi smiled bitterly in his heart. Of course it was very powerful. That was a legendary divine beast, a mysterious existence that was not inferior to the divine dragon. Whoosh! Tian Chanzi took a few deep breaths. He was very knowledgeable and had even seen the dragon clan. Why should he be so afraid of the Fire Qilin? Didn't it also have 4 claws? There was nothing to be afraid of. He kept trying to comfort himself, and finally, it worked a little. His mood gradually calmed down. The Fire Qilin shook its huge head and stared at the two of them with its bell-sized eyes. Finally, its gaze fell on the unconscious Tang Zheng. Whoosh! It stepped on the air and walked straight toward Tang Zheng. Linger screamed in fright and hurriedly pulled Tang Zheng to her side, afraid that he would fall into the Fire Qilin's hands. The Fire Qilin glared at Linger with dissatisfaction, as if asking why she was not cooperating. Then, its body flashed and flew toward Tang Zheng. Don't hurt, master. Linger was shocked as she flew over in an attempt to help Tang Zheng out of this predicament. With a flash of light, Linger had turned into a human and hugged Tang Zheng. She used her back to resist the Fire Qilin, not giving it a chance to hurt Tang Zheng. Bang! There was no sharp pain as expected. Linger was pushed forward by a wave of heat. She stabilized her body with great difficulty. Turning her head, she saw Tian Chanzi and the Fire Qilin fighting. Tang Zheng did not expect that there would be a fire qilin in the core of the earth. But no matter who it was, they could not stop him from saving himself. Therefore, he made a prompt decision and ordered Linger, "Quickly throw me into the magma." Linger was originally at a loss. After hearing Tang Zheng's words, she seemed to have found her backbone. She nodded fiercely and loosened her hands. With a plop, Tang Zheng fell from her hands and fell straight into the magma, splashing red magma all over the sky. Tian Chanzi was fighting fiercely with the fire qilin. After recovering from the initial shock, Tian Chanzi gritted his teeth and used all his skills to fight with the fire qilin. There was no doubt that the fire qilin was a legendary divine beast. Its power was quite great. After only a few moves, Tian Chanzi had already deeply felt and experienced its power. But he did not retreat. He was the only line of defense. There was no way to retreat. Hearing the plop, Tian Chanzi's heart trembled. He hurriedly turned his head and saw Tang Zheng being submerged in magma and quickly sinking. Immediately, his face turned ashen. He did not expect that after encountering such an unforeseen event, Tang Zheng would still be so stubborn. This time, it was really difficult to predict the danger. The fire qilin also saw this scene and snorted. It seemed to be sneering complacently, laughing at Tang Zheng for overestimating himself. Tian Chanzi took a deep breath and simply ignored Tang Zheng. He had to deal with the fire qilin first. Otherwise, he would die in the fire qilin's hands before knowing whether Tang Zheng was alive or dead. "Kill!" Tian Chanzi roared. The Taya sword revealed its sharpness and slashed out again. Immediately, the whistling sound of the sword resounded through the space, shaking people's souls. However, the fire qilin's eyes showed contempt. It roared and sucked in the magma like a giant whale sucking in water. Walala, the magma was sucked into its mouth like water. Puff! It opened its mouth and spat at Tian Chanzi. The hot red magma was driven by the strong pressure and shot at Tian Chanzi like a sword released from a bow. Tian Chanzi hurriedly formed a sword sign with both hands. The Taya sword buzzed and trembled as if it was crying. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Rays of sword light gathered in front of him and condensed into a sword wall. Kacha! The magma directly smashed the sword wall into pieces and surged towards Tian Chanzi. Tian Chanzi shouted and pushed forward with both hands. The Taya sword was placed horizontally in front of his chest. The surging sword chi rushed out like a tide. Boom! With a loud sound, the space seemed to tremble. The Taya sword finally blocked the impact of the magma. Roar, roar, roar. The fire qilin seemed to be angry that its attack did not work. It opened its mouth and spat out a ball of flame. It mixed with the magma and attacked the Taya sword. The Taya sword slowly turned red and was extremely hot. It was as if it was being refined by the high temperature. If it was not for Tian Chanzi's Jin Qi, it was likely that it would have been refined. Tian Chanzi felt a wave of heat in his face. His hair and clothes were about to burn, especially his hair. He could already smell a burning smell. Damn it, do you want me to become bald? Tian Chanzi cursed. I won't let you succeed. Taya sword, man and sword as one. Tian Chanzi had also broken through the man and sword as one realm. Although he was not as good as Tang Zheng, his power was doubled. With a flash of light, he and the Taya sword became one. The sword was the person, and the person was the sword. Whoosh! A sharp sound pierced through the air, piercing through the magma and flames and heading straight for the fire qilin's head. The fire qilin looked at it with disdain and waved its claws. A red light flashed on them. Bang! With a muffled sound, the Taya sword was sent flying and slammed into the wall. The tip of the sword penetrated the wall and continued to tremble. Next to it, a human-shaped hole appeared in the wall. Tian Chanzi happened to be embedded in it. Translation. Chapter 1638. The fire Qilin swatted away Tianchanzi with its claw, then turned around and aimed at Linger. Linger quickly calmed down and pointed forward with her slender hand. A vine flew out from between her fingers, and like a whip, ruthlessly lashed at the fire Qilin. Roar! The fire Qilin roared, and a ball of flames flew out from its mouth, burning the vines in an instant, causing the attack to collapse. Linger turned pale with fright and hurriedly retreated. However, this was the fire Qilin's territory after all. It moved like the wind, bringing along a wave of heat as it pounced towards Linger. Whoosh! Whoosh! Vines flew out from between Linger's fingers and quickly condensed into a wall that glowed with a faint green light. Boom! The fire Qilin crashed into the wall, causing it to tremble violently. Linger's face turned pale. Although she had broken through to the first tier of the demigod realm, she was still too weak compared to the fire Qilin. Even Tianchanzi was no match for it, let alone Linger. Kacha! A large hole was torn open in the wall. The fire Qilin shook its body and rushed forward. In an instant, the wall shattered into pieces and fell apart. Linger had already retreated to the side of the main route. Seeing the fire Qilin recklessly rushing over, she seized the main root and used it as a whip, ruthlessly whipping the fire Qilin. Pa! A crisp sound rang out, clear and ear-piercing. The fire Qilin was sent flying backwards, crashing into the wall and creating a huge crater. Rocks fell down with a crash. Ah! Linger was stunned by this scene. She looked at the main root of the tree of life in her hand in disbelief. The main root had been completely lifted out of the magma by her. She could even see the fiery red light at the end, which was tainted by the magma. Not only was the main root not afraid of the lava, it was actually so powerful that it could send the fire Qilin flying. This was not only Linger's power, but also the main root's own divine power. The fire Qilin leaped out from the wall with its hind legs and stood in the air. Balls of flames appeared under its four hooves as it glared at Linger and the main root in her hand. However, when its gaze fell on the main root, there was a hint of fear in its eyes. Ling noticed this, and she curiously looked at the main root in her hand. She couldn't see anything special about it, and it wasn't much different from a normal root. In fact, it was much smaller than a normal root. However, she did not dare to underestimate its divine might. She was like a drowning person who had grabbed onto a life-saving straw. She firmly grasped it in the palm of her hand and was unwilling to let go for a moment. At some point in time, Tianchanzi had also climbed out of the pit. Seeing the two sides confronting each other, he asked in surprise, "Why doesn't it dare to attack?" Ling couldn't figure it out and guessed, "It seems to be afraid of the main root of the tree of life." Tianchanzi was overjoyed and arrived beside Ling in a flash. He tried to take the main root and impatiently said, "Ha, ha, ha, the heavens have eyes. Then let's use the main root to deal with it." Ah! When his hand landed on the main root, he couldn't help but scream miserably. As if he had been electrocuted, he quickly withdrew his hand. Ling looked at him curiously and asked with concern, "Senior, what happened to you?" Tianchanzi looked at the main root in fear and said with an expression as if he had seen a ghost, "There is a mysterious power on this main root. Didn't you notice? This power can release a powerful attack. Didn't you feel it?" Ling was confused and blankly shook her head, "I didn't feel it." The fire Qilin looked at this scene without saying a word. Especially when Tianchanzi was defeated, its mouth revealed a playful expression, as if it was mocking him for overestimating himself. Tianchanzi's eyes turned and also saw the fire Qilin's reaction. "See, I was right. It also thinks so." Ling was even more confused. She scratched her head and said in confusion, "But I didn't feel anything." Tianchanzi and the fire Qilin both revealed shocked and suspicious expressions. They couldn't guess why Ling wasn't repelled by the main root of the tree of life. Heaven Monk thought hard, then had an idea, and said, "Could it be that because you are not a human or an animal, but a ginseng, you have something in common with the tree of life, so it did not reject you?" Ling opened her eyes wide and thought for a while. It seemed that this was really possible. She wanted to ask Tang Zheng if this was the case, but after shouting for a long time, there was no response. She remembered that since Tang Zheng's body fell into the magma, their telepathy seemed to have been cut off. It must be so. This is your unique advantage, others can't compare to it. Tian Chanzi thought for a long time and said with certainty. Ling Er's face also showed a trace of joy. Then we can fight against the fire Qilin. Tian Chanzi didn't comment and said with a smile, at least, we can save our lives for the time being. Without this advantage, Tian Chanzi didn't have the confidence to save his life from the fire Qilin. Maybe his life would have been lost here. Roar. The fire Qilin saw that the two were unscrupulous and became angrier. Its two front hooves kept pawing in the air, and a burning feeling hit them in the face. The fire Qilin launched another attack. Tian Chanzi hurriedly urged, quickly, use the main root to whip it. Ling waved the main root, and with a whoosh, the main root drew a whistling sound in the air and whipped the fire Qilin. Roar. Sparks splashed out from the fire Qilin's body. It cried out in pain and flew out again, unable to get close. But this thoroughly angered it. Not only did it not stop attacking, but it roared even more mournfully and angrily. Its hind legs kicked off the wall and rushed over again like a cannonball. Tian Chanzi excitedly danced and commanded proudly, whip it, left, right, center, yes, whip its head, let it know how powerful it is. In the eyes of the two, the fire Qilin had long since shed its mysterious light. It was as if it had turned into an ordinary wild beast, allowing the small whip to whip it as it pleased. Ling could not help but breathe a sigh of relief. The tree of life's main root was really powerful. It was not inferior to a sacred tool. It could actually release such a powerful divine power that even the fire Qilin could not get close. Tian Chanzi's hands were itching, but he could not control the main root. He could only watch enviously as Ling waved the main root to attack. He could not help but think that if the main root was refined into a magical treasure, its power would be heaven-defying. But this could only be a thought. Without the main root, how could the tree of life survive? It was practically destroying the world. There were many more marks on the fire Qilin's body. They were all left behind by the main root. Although it was very unruly at first, continuously attacking. But gradually, its arrogance gradually decreased. Because it was afraid of the main root, it had no way to break through its opponent's defense. Splash! Suddenly, the magma violently rolled, attracting the fire Qilin's attention. It immediately stopped attacking and opened its bell-like eyes, staring at the magma suspiciously. To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Chapter 1639. Rumble. A long line of bubbles appeared in the magma. Crash. Huge waves surged out from the magma. This scene immediately attracted the three pairs of eyes, and all kinds of complicated thoughts arose in their hearts. Heaven Monk roared. He was the first to react, pouncing straight towards the magma. With a plop sound, the magma splashed into the sky, and disappeared without a trace. Tian Chanzi and Linger looked at each other in dismay, and both of them were worried. Linger said uneasily, Senior, the fire Qilin rushed down, so what about Master? Master can't move, so won't he be killed by the fire Qilin? Tian Chanzi was silent, because he couldn't make up his mind. As for whether Tang Zheng was alive or dead, he couldn't guess. He took a deep breath, looked at Linger's anxious and worried face, and advised without confidence, Linger, don't worry, that brat won't die so easily. Although he said so, he couldn't believe his own words. This was because he was completely unable to understand how Tang Zheng could survive under these conditions, especially under the precondition of having the fire Qilin as a huge threat. Linger bit her lips, hesitated, and said, I want to go down and save Master. Don't, that's not a joke. This is magma, you'll melt if you go down, and not even your bones will be left. Tian Chanzi hurriedly held her back, afraid that she would do something stupid. This little girl was really willing to give up her life for Tang Zheng. How could this brat's charm be so great? Tian Chanzi kept cursing in his heart, firmly holding on to her, not letting go. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Suddenly, the sound of wind came from the hole above them, and several figures descended from the sky. A fragrant smell assailed their nostrils. It was Fang Shishir and the others. They were worried about Tang Zheng's safety, so they chased after him at the same time. They were really not afraid of encountering danger. Fortunately, the space in the Earth's core was big enough, so even if there were a few people standing there, it didn't feel crowded. Tian Chanzi, on the other hand, felt a headache coming on. He looked helplessly at the group of orioles and swallows and said, "Why did you all come down too? Don't you know how dangerous this place is?" A few people's gazes swept around, clearly looking for Tang Zheng's figure, but in the end, they did not find him at all. Yi Dingdang was anxious and took the lead to ask, "Where is Tang Zheng? Where did he go?" The others echoed, "Yes, where did he go?" Linger pointed at the boiling magma below and said, "Master went down." Ah! Cries of surprise rose and fell one after another. Everyone's faces were filled with shock as they asked, "How did he fall?" Master requested to go down, Linger explained. He wants to absorb the yang qi from the Earth's core to achieve the effect of extreme yang producing yin. Isn't this nonsense? What will be left if he goes down? Everyone was anxious. Fang Shishir bit her lips until a trace of blood appeared. Without saying a word, she directly rushed into the magma. Tian Chanzi saw this and shouted, "Stop!" He had no choice but to let go of Linger and fly down. He grabbed Fang Shishir and said earnestly, "Disciple, you are seeking death, do you know that? If he's not here, then what's the point of me living?" Fang Shishir said painfully. Tian Chanzi felt a headache coming on. He sternly ordered, "I am your master. Don't tell me you don't even listen to your master's words. Live well for me. You are not allowed to commit suicide." As his voice fell, another person fell down. Tian Chanzi anxiously shouted and hurriedly pulled the other person, shouting, "Do you also want to commit suicide?" Yi Dingdang said with red eyes, "I am not your disciple. I don't need to listen to you." Tian Chanzi was so angry that he stamped his feet. He looked around and found that the others seemed to have the idea of rushing down. Immediately, he flew into a rage and said, "Do you think that this is suicide? You are so wrong. Are you all idiots? Have you forgotten that Tang Zheng can always turn danger into safety? Since this is his own choice, his own decision, then he must have confidence. If you all rush down and you all die, then what's the point of him living? Do you want him to live in self-blame and pain for the rest of his life? Is this the so-called love you keep on talking about?" Tian Chanzi did not leave any face. Every word was like a gem, piercing blood, enlightening the apathetic. Everyone was suddenly stunned and stopped thinking of rushing into the magma. Fang Shishir said with grievance, "Master, I was wrong. I won't rush down." Yi Dingdang nodded and lowered her head, saying, "I was wrong too. Let go of my hand." The despair in the others' eyes lessened a lot and a little hope was ignited. Tian Chanzi was relieved. The words just now were so enlightening that he actually believed it a little. "Tang Zheng, you are a jinx. Knowing that so many beauties are willing to die for you, your life is really worth it." Tian Chanzi's heart was filled with emotion. Although he kept encouraging Tang Zheng to absorb other people's pure yin energy, Tang Zheng did not stop at the surface. Instead, he used sincerity in exchange for sincerity. The results proved that Tang Zheng was right. When a person gave sincerity, they would often receive sincerity. If it was fake or even used, how could there be so many gains? Everyone dispelled the idea of dying for love and stared at the rolling magma. They all had the same question in their hearts. What happened to Tang Zheng? What kind of scene was under the magma? Taking advantage of everyone calming down, Tian Chanzi told everyone about what happened just now so that the fire Qilin would not appear and cause everyone to panic. Hearing that the fire Qilin had also entered the magma, everyone became even more worried. The rolling magma blocked everyone's line of sight, but it could not stop the fire Qilin. It was like a fish in water as it moved stealthily through the magma, looking for the source of the commotion. It was very puzzled. There were actually people who could survive in the magma. This was completely out of its expectations. It could move freely in the magma because it was a natural divine beast. It accompanied the magma and absorbed the energy in the Earth's core to survive. The magma was like water to a fish and air to a human. The deeper the magma went, the brighter the red light became. It was even a little dazzling, but it did not have any effect on the fire Qilin. It even widened its eyes and stared straight at the fiery red light. Its pupils were also dyed red, but it did not feel dazzling at all. Suddenly, the fire Qilin's pupils shrank. It finally found its target and revealed an expression of relief. This was because it saw that the target was rapidly melting. His muscles had already disappeared, leaving behind only the white bones. At this moment, even the bones were melting bit by bit. The fire Qilin let out a strange laugh, as if laughing at the other party for overestimating himself and daring to step into the Earth's core. Did he really think that he was the same as the fire Qilin? Now, not even dregs were left. It was satisfied to admire this scene. It was only waiting for it to completely melt. Then, it would go up and take care of the others. But when it thought of the main root of the tree of life, it had a headache. In addition, it had a question in its heart. Since this person was about to melt, how did the magma's movement just now cause it? To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Chapter 1640. The fire Qilin could not understand, and did not have time to think about it, because the sudden change attracted its attention. That set of white bones had already completely melted, but there were still 4 things left. A heart that kept beating non-stop, a meridian that ran through the body, a treasured sword that glittered with cold light, and a spherical object. This object was the purple mansion. It was completely purple and slightly transparent, and could be vaguely seen. The Yuanying was quietly lying inside. Huh! The fire Qilin opened its eyes wide. It had never seen such a miraculous scene. It could not help but scratch its head, not understanding the situation. It took large strides forward and extended its claws, trying to test it. But before its claws could touch the target, the hidden profound sword burst out with a resplendent and sharp sword light, letting out a resounding sword cry. The hidden profound sword had a spirit and sword spirit. When it realized that its master was in danger, it automatically protected its master and instinctively launched a counterattack. Shwa! A ray of light slashed towards the fire Qilin. Pung! The fire Qilin waved its claws to block and coincidentally collided with the sword light, splashing out a long string of sparks. The fire Qilin roared. Its underestimation led to serious consequences. The sharp pain from its claws made it very angry. When it looked carefully, its claws cracked open. Wasn't this plucking the hair from a tiger's head? If this could be tolerated, what could not? The fire Qilin roared at the hidden profound sword. The surrounding magma quickly gathered like a big water ball, and with a whoosh, it flew out. Boom! The magma was about to hit the beating heart, but the hidden profound sword flew out. A curtain of light fell, protecting the heart and the main meridian. This main meridian was formed from the dragon vein. It was extraordinary, so even the magma could not melt it. The sword light blocked the magma's attack. In an instant, there seemed to be a vacuum in the center of the earth. The fire Qilin was thoroughly angry. Ever since it was born, it had never seen such a scene. It was really shocked and angry. Its divine might was seriously challenged. How preposterous. Whoosh! It dove down towards the hidden profound sword like a ray of light. Not only was it fast, but it was also very fierce. Boom! With a loud sound, the magma violently rolled, setting off a huge wave. Whoosh! Huge waves soared into the sky. The people outside were shocked and hurriedly hid in the cave. They watched as the magma melted everything in its path. The surrounding rock walls melted, and the space in the core of the earth became even more spacious and huge. Everyone turned pale with fright, not understanding what was going on. Tian Chanzi had an idea and said, "That's great." The others looked at him blankly, but a few smart people gradually understood and showed joy. Li Xiaotian couldn't wait and said, "It must be Tang Zheng, otherwise there wouldn't be such a big movement. He's definitely not dead." Everyone suddenly realized that this sentence had given them great hope. Just as Tian Chanzi had predicted, Tang Zheng would not die so easily. Everyone stretched their necks, trying to see through the magma. "Then what should we do?" Lu Qingmei asked worriedly. Tian Chanzi hesitated for a moment and shook his head regretfully. "There's nothing we can do. We can only pray that Tang Zheng can deal with this difficult situation." Immediately, everyone's expression became gloomy. They silently prayed for Tang Zheng in their hearts. Many people had the same thought. If the Empyrean fairy was here, perhaps they wouldn't be so helpless. Originally, many people were somewhat against the Empyrean fairy and didn't want her to join their ranks. But after encountering such a situation, this kind of idea couldn't help but waver. Although Tang Zheng had many women by his side, none of them had a very powerful cultivation. They could even stand shoulder to shoulder with him. The Empyrean fairy was the most suitable candidate. Was it really necessary to let the Empyrean fairy mix into everyone's team and become Tang Zheng's right-hand woman? In the magma, the fire Qilin's attack didn't completely break the hidden mysterious sword's defense. In fact, the hidden mysterious sword was in imminent danger. After all, it didn't have a master to control it. It could only rely on its instincts to counterattack. Although its power wasn't weak, it was still not enough to deal with a mythical beast like the fire Qilin. The fire Qilin stopped and opened its eyes wide. It stared at the hidden mysterious sword and behind it. Suddenly, its pupils shrank as it saw a very magical scene. Bloodlines spread out from the Qi Yu's heart like blood vessels. They quickly swam around Tang Zheng's body and finally reached the Zifu, completely enveloping it. The Zifu seemed to be wrapped in a bloody light. The purple light was suffused with a red color. It was very magical. Whoosh! Another ray of light emitted from the main meridians and wrapped around these blood vessels. Little bits of flesh attached to the bloody light started to grow. With the hidden mysterious sword light wrapped around it, there was no magma that could hurt it. It was the best protection. Although the fire Qilin didn't understand what was going on, it realized that the situation was not good. It couldn't let the opponent continue. Roar! It roared and its four hooves ignited. With a whoosh, it rushed toward the hidden mysterious sword. The hidden profound sword hummed as it once again tried to defend against the attack, but in the end, it was unable to do so. With a kacha sound, its defense crumbled as the sword light shattered into pieces. Magma flowed towards Tang Zheng from all directions. Zzzt zzzt zzzt. Tang Zheng was completely wrapped in the magma. Waves of white gas appeared around him, but it didn't stop this at all. His body was rapidly growing at a speed visible to the naked eye. On the contrary, the red light in the magma was absorbed by Tang Zheng. It was like a thin line wrapped around Tang Zheng's body. In a place of extreme yang qi was abundant. He was absorbing the yang qi in the earth's core. It was all gathered toward his body, as if it was going to fill his body. This was Tang Zheng's plan. He was going to die and fight to live. Then, he would use a large amount of yang qi to create yin qi. This would allow him to survive. The fire Qilin couldn't understand this scene, but it knew that this scene was harmful to it. It relied on absorbing yang qi to increase its cultivation and power. Now, someone was trying to steal food from the tiger's mouth. How could it agree? Suddenly, its eyes almost popped out. Its pupils seemed to be on fire. It kept roaring and rushed toward Tang Zheng. Whoosh! The hidden mysterious sword was eager to protect its master. How could it let it succeed? It quickly returned to defend. The two sides fought fiercely again. As time passed, Tang Zheng's body grew more and more. The fire Qilin didn't have time to think. Its attack power increased greatly. Clang! In the end, the hidden mysterious sword couldn't stop the fire Qilin and was sent flying. Then, the fire Qilin aggressively rushed toward Tang Zheng with a belly full of anger. Its sharp claws were completely revealed. They flickered with a fiery red light. The flames on its body also whizzed out. Under its threat, Tang Zheng was in danger. It seemed that he didn't have the power to resist. The magma was separated by itself. There was no way to resist its attack. Buzz! The hidden mysterious sword was eager to protect its master. It cried loudly, but there was no way. It was too late to save him. To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Chapter 1641. The fire Qilin's flames enveloped Tang Zheng as if it wanted to burn him to ashes. Pop! The fire Qilin's sharp claws followed closely behind and ruthlessly slashed at Tang Zheng. The magma and flames parted on their own as they were unable to withstand the power of the claws. The fire Qilin's eyes flashed with complacency as if it could foresee the scene of its opponent being split into two by its sharp claws. However, things did not go as it wished. Its claws seemed to have encountered an unbreakable layer of defense. With a dang sound, it was actually bounced back. Ah! This scene shocked the fire Qilin. Its eyes widened even more as it was unable to accept this scene. However, its reaction was lightning fast. The second round of attacks came unexpectedly, ferocious and lightning fast. Bang! Its claws accurately hit Tang Zheng. Layers of waves gushed out from his body and spread in all directions. Circles of ripples also appeared in the magma. This movement set off a huge wave outside, scaring the others so much that they did not dare to leave the cave. However, in the next second, the fire Qilin's eyes seemed to be about to pop out. Its target was actually unharmed. On the contrary, more and more flesh appeared on his body, as if it was about to finish growing. In addition, his body was densely packed with red lines. These were not blood vessels, but the yang qi absorbed from the magma in the earth's core. The fire Qilin could not be more familiar with this. It angrily roared. This uninvited guest actually dared to snatch food from its mouth while it was powerless to do anything. It turned its eyes and suddenly opened its bloody mouth, aimed at Tang Zheng, and bit down. Its mouth quickly grew larger, and not long after, it turned into an existence like a black hole. With a so sound, it swallowed Tang Zheng in one bite. Buzz! Seeing this scene, the hidden mysterious sword was angry and anxious. That was its master, and it was actually swallowed just like that. How could it sit and watch? Whoosh! The sword light expanded as the hidden mysterious sword instinctively activated its power to the extreme. It turned into a ray of light. Even in the magma's core, the sword light was exceptionally dazzling, completely suppressing the other rays of light. The fire Qilin turned its head and discovered the terrifying attack of the hidden mysterious sword. It gathered all its power to defend. Rumble. The surrounding magma seemed to have a life of its own as it quickly converged towards the fire Qilin. In an instant, it turned into a thick wall of magma, giving off a feeling of being as solid as a fortress. Boom! This defense blocked the hidden mystic sword. The hidden mystic sword was pressed against the lava. Every inch it moved forward was extremely difficult, as if it had used up all of its strength. The magma was being worn down, but the hidden mystic sword was still moving forward. The fire Qilin was not worried about the hidden sword at all. Instead, it was immensely proud of itself, like a victorious general. Daring to invade its territory, now you know how powerful it is. It entered its stomach and became its meal. Then, it had to return to the surface and get rid of the other fish that had escaped the net. Whoosh! It rushed up, and the magma parted like seawater. The hidden mystic sword seemed to have sensed its intention and tried to change its direction to attack it. However, how could it let the hidden Xian sword succeed? With a thought, the magma surrounded the hidden Xian sword from all directions. Like a cage, it trapped the hidden Xian sword in an instant, sealing off all of its escape routes. There was no way to stop its movements. Whoosh! The magma parted on its own, and the fire Qilin rushed up to the sky, turning into a ray of light. It rushed to the surface of the magma and saw its target in the cave. Tian Chanzi and the others had been nervously watching the situation. When they saw a figure rush out, their eyes widened, and their hearts could not help but tighten. But when they saw clearly that it was the fire Qilin, they were shocked and terrified. An ominous premonition attacked their hearts. The fire Qilin rushed out safe and sound. Could it be that Tang Zheng had met with an accident? The flame of hope that had been ignited was extinguished in an instant. Their eyes dimmed, and they stared blankly at the fire Qilin. The flame of anger gradually burned in the depths of their eyes, and quickly filled their eyes. Tang Zheng had been killed by the fire Qilin, so they must avenge him. Even if they had to die, they would not hesitate. So, one by one, they did not shrink back. With a whoosh, they flew out of the cave and stood in the air, confronting the fire Qilin. Tian Chanzi looked at this scene and was really frightened. He shouted loudly, "Come back!" But no one listened to him. Each and every one of the girls was not inferior to the men. They were valiant and heroic, and they angrily confronted the fire Qilin. Tian Chanzi sighed with mixed feelings and said, "Ah, crazy, all of them are crazy. They really are a group of people who are not afraid of death. I have lived for more than 1,000 years. It seems that I have lived to the end. Tang Zheng, you stinking brat, you have really killed me." After saying this, he also flew out of the cave in a flash. He stood side by side with the girls, and stared at the fire Qilin without fear. The fire Qilin's eyes showed contempt, but there was also a trace of confusion. It was very clear that these people were not its opponents, but they were not afraid of death at all. They did not know how to run away, but dared to confront it. This kind of suicidal behavior was unreasonable in its eyes. But it did not look into it. Instead, its eyes showed a cold light, as if it was going to melt these people into nothing. "Kill!" The girls shouted in unison. They all attacked at the same time. All kinds of attacks were sent towards the fire Qilin's body. The fire Qilin's eyes were frivolous. It did not care at all. The only person it was on guard against was Ling Er. It was very afraid of the main root of the tree of life in her hands. This was the so-called mutual promotion and restraint. Among the things in the earth's core, only the main root could restrain the fire Qilin. The fire Qilin was also very clear about this point. Therefore, it took the lead to attack Ling Er. It had to get rid of this most troublesome target first. Then the others would naturally not be a concern. It ignored the other people's attacks. Its whole body was covered in raging flames. Once those attacks came close to the flames, they would turn into nothing. There was no way to threaten it. Step by step, it approached Ling Er. It was like a tiger watching its prey. Its eyes were also firmly locked onto her. Ling Er grasped the main root tightly. Her palms were sweating. With a shout, the main root was like a whip, fiercely lashing out. The fire Qilin was always on guard. It was accumulating power and waiting to attack. How could it be hit so easily? It dodged with a whoosh. The main root whipped on top of the rolling magma. The Earth's core seemed to be split into two. The magma automatically parted to two sides, revealing the scene in the depths of the Earth's core. The scene in the Earth's core attracted many people's attention. They only saw a sword light flash past. The hidden profound sword flew up. The main root's attack even drew away the magma that was confining it. The hidden profound sword escaped and soared into the sky. It directly slashed towards the fire Qilin, as if it was an irreconcilable enmity. To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Chapter 1642. Everyone noticed the movement of the hidden profound sword and was shocked. The relationship between the hidden profound sword and Tang Zheng could not be clearer. Now that only the hidden profound sword was left, didn't that mean that Tang Zheng met with an accident? Originally, everyone still had a trace of luck in their hearts, but now it was completely gone. Everyone's expression was extremely desperate. Whoosh! The hidden Xian sword slashed towards the fire Qilin. The fire Qilin's two claws moved forward and grabbed the hidden Xian sword. The flames from its claws and the sword light from the hidden Xian sword suppressed each other. Roar! Suddenly, the fire Qilin let out a shocking roar. The flames on its claws increased explosively and suppressed the sword light of the hidden profound sword. It caused the hidden profound sword's attack to deviate. The hidden profound sword brushed past the fire Qilin and flew out like a meteor. Boom! The hidden profound sword shot into the rock wall, leaving behind a big hole. It was so deep that the bottom could not be seen. No one knew how deep it flew before it disappeared. Seeing this scene, everyone's heart trembled. Without prior agreement, they shouted themselves hoarse, "Kill!" Waves of angry shouts resounded through the earth's core. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, multicolored treasures once again greeted the fire Qilin. The fire Qilin was not afraid of everyone's attacks. The only thing it was afraid of was the main root. Especially when it saw the main root split the earth's core magma in two, that overflowing power and aura made it even more afraid. Whoosh! The main root flew back and once again whipped towards the fire Qilin. The other people's attacks also arrived unexpectedly. The fire Qilin kicked the air and directly crashed into the multicolored treasures. Dang dang dang, a series of muffled sounds rang out. The treasures flew out randomly. There were even treasures that fell into the earth's core magma and melted into liquid, completely destroyed. The treasures being destroyed or damaged made many people feel the same way. It was as if they were struck by lightning. One after another, their faces turned pale. The fire Qilin's attack was not only that. It turned into a flame and flew past everyone with a whoosh. Everyone tried to dodge, but there was no way to dodge. In front of the fire Qilin, they were like children without the strength to truss a chicken. Peng peng peng, one after another, graceful figures were sent flying, crashing into the walls in disarray. Only then did they stop, spitting out blood. There were even some who almost fell into the lava, their lives hanging by a thread. Screams and cries rang out everywhere. Although everyone was prepared to die, the reality still deeply shocked them. He was filled with regret for being unable to withstand a single blow. Only Tian Chanzi and Linger were lucky enough to escape. Tian Chanzi relied on the Taya sword in his hand to barely resist the fire Kirin. Linger took the initiative to attack, but the fire Kirin didn't want to fight, so she couldn't do anything. The power of the main root was great, but it did not have its own consciousness. Linger's cultivation was much lower than the fire Qilin's, so when the fire Qilin was on full alert, she could not really threaten the fire Qilin. The fire Qilin was in high spirits as it looked at its defeated opponents. It shook its head and wagged its tail, and its eyes were filled with contempt. Linger saw that her companions were being humiliated and became anxious. Her attacks became more and more chaotic, giving the fire Qilin an opportunity. The fire Qilin looked for an opening, and a flame flashed in its eyes. It attacked like thunder, sweeping out its claws. Linger was swept away. If not for the main root's defense, her head would have been cut off. This thrilling scene made people scream loudly. Their hearts were in their throats, and their breathing seemed to have stopped. In the end, Tian Chanzi was the only one left. His palms were sweating, and his eyes gradually turned from panic to determination. He took a deep breath and shouted, "Laozi will also risk it all for you. In the next life, I will also be a good man. Tang Zheng, you better remember, this life of mine is for you." Swoosh! The Taya sword soared into the sky and turned into a huge sword light, almost occupying the entire space, and shrouding the fire Qilin's head. The fire Qilin's mouth made a whistling sound. Apparently, it was angry. Its eyes were burning with flames, and the flames on its body were also rising. It was not inferior to the Taya sword at all. Cut! Tianchanzi roared, and the Taya sword fell down heavily. The fire Qilan soared into the sky, and the flames on its head soared into the sky, turning into a huge claw. Clang! With a loud sound, the shockwave spread in all directions and hit the wall, causing the rocks to rustle and fall down. Puff! Tianchanzi spat out a mouthful of blood, and his expression became gloomy. He staggered back, and only stopped when he hit the rock again. The fire Qilan's momentum was like a rainbow, and its arrogance was monstrous. Although it also retreated a lot, and only then did it resolve the attack of the Taya sword, it still won. It looked contemptuously at Tianchanzi and the others, as if it wanted to give the last blow. Everyone was defeated, and they looked at each other in dismay. Their faces were ashen, but no one retreated. They looked like they were ready to sacrifice themselves. Their hope had been completely shattered. Without Tang Zheng, there was not much meaning in living. The fire Qilan approached the crowd step by step. Seeing that no one retreated, its eyes revealed a puzzled look, as if it did not understand why this group of people was not afraid of death. Fang Shishir could not help but hold Yi Dingdong's hand tightly. Yi Dingdang looked at her, nodded slightly, clenched her teeth, and then held Lu Qingmei's hand. Lu Qingmei nodded her head in tacit understanding. Her eyes were red, and her expression was resolute. She then held Marshall's hand. Marshall turned his head to look at Li Xiaotian. The two of them had always been in a competitive relationship. Since they were young, one was the head disciple of the Marshall sect, and the other was the holy maiden of Li Palace. They were both outstanding people in their sects and were also the focus of everyone's attention. Naturally, they also became the targets of comparison. You chase and I chase, each with their own advantages and disadvantages, each with their own gains and losses. In fact, on the matter of Tang Zheng, the two of them also had the intention of competing. One wanted to control the Li Palace, while the other wanted to stay in Dianan and share Tang Zheng's worries. However, at this moment, the barrier in their hearts had collapsed. They had buried the hatchet and become comrades in arms. Therefore, Marshall naturally held Li Xiaotian's hand. Li Xiaotian was not afraid. Her expression was indifferent, as if even if the sky collapsed, to her, her expression would not change. Instead, a mysterious smile appeared on her face. Li Xiaotian took the opportunity to grab Linger's hand. Linger's heart tightened, and then relaxed. She looked at Li Xiaotian, nodded her head, and took a deep breath. She no longer had the main root in her hand. In that attack, the main root had already flown out of her hand. The fire Qilan did not give her a chance to get close to the main root. Therefore, her advantage had been completely obliterated. However, her heart was not lonely. Because with a few good sisters, even if they went to the Yellow Springs, they would not be lonely. In fact, they could even reunite with Tang Zheng. When they thought of this, they did not have the slightest bit of fear. Each and every one of them was unafraid of death. Tianchanzi's gaze swept past them one by one. His mood was extremely agitated, as if he was also infected by their imposing manner. He straightened his back, puffed out his chest, and faced the approaching fire Qilan. He was unafraid of death. For the latest novel updates, please visit the website. Chapter 1643. The fire Qilan closed in step by step until it was only inches away from the crowd. The large mouth spat out a blazing aura that hit their faces, causing them to feel a burning pain. The fire Qilan moved its front two hooves as if it was preparing to launch its final charge. So, it turned into a flame and fiercely pounced towards the crowd. That rainbow-like aura caused everyone's liver and gallbladder to tremble, as if their hearts were about to rush out of their chests. It caused everyone's breathing to become heavy and extremely unsmooth. Everyone's eyes were wide open as the fire Qilan's figure rapidly enlarged in their eyes. In the next second, it seemed as if they would be swallowed by that bloody mouth. The fire Qilin believed that victory was in its grasp and that there would not be any more variables. Suddenly, its body stiffened as it slammed on the brakes and stopped in midair, only a short distance away from the crowd. Everyone was shocked as they did not know why the fire Qilin stopped in front of them. Could it be that it wanted to taunt them? Was there a need? Everyone stared at the fire Qilin. The fire Qilin's body was covered in flames as it fiercely struggled and roared with all its might. Roar! A scorching wave of air rushed out from its mouth and swept towards the crowd like a fiery tornado. Everyone was blown away by the wind, but they keenly noticed that the roar seemed to be filled with pain and struggle. What was going on? They did not know. After all, the fire Qilin had the upper hand, so it should not have gone crazy halfway. The fire Qilin rolled in midair, bringing with it a large amount of flames as if the air had been ignited. At the same time, the magma below also began to roll, setting off waves after waves that were shocking to the core. Rays of fiery red light converged towards the fire Qilin from all directions, especially the rays of light that floated out from the magma. They were like ribbons that completely converged on the fire Qilin's body. The fire Qilin kept roaring, its voice was like thunder that spread throughout the space, rumbling without stopping. Everyone could not help but cover their ears as this deafening sound caused their hearts to sway and their minds to fall into disarray. Something seems to have happened to the fire Qilin. Tian Chanzi had a flash of inspiration as he thoughtfully said. The others deeply agreed as everyone could see that something was wrong. The fire Qilin's unforeseen event was already very clear. But what kind of unforeseen event could actually cause the powerful fire Qilin to become like this? Linger stared at the churning lava and the red light that surrounded the fire Qilin. Her heart stirred as she asked, "Do you think it's master?" Tang Zheng? Everyone was shocked. There was no other explanation for all these changes. The only explanation was probably Tang Zheng. Is it him? Everyone was skeptical. Linger, on the other hand, was even more convinced. She nodded stubbornly. I believe that master must have done something. Wasn't he already gone? This was the question in everyone's mind. However, there was a strong impulse in his heart. He would rather believe Linger's words and believe that Tang Zheng had done something. The fire Qilin continued to struggle in midair. The flames on its body were actually extinguished, shrinking inward and disappearing into its body. Only the streaks of red light continued to converge on the fire Qilin from all directions. They turned into thousands of threads that completely wrapped around the fire Qilin's body, causing its struggle to become slower and slower. Only its deafening roar was still ringing out. Boom! Suddenly, a loud sound came from the wall. Everyone was shocked and hurriedly turned their heads to look. They saw that the sound from the wall was getting louder and louder. It was as if something was about to rush out. What is it? This question popped up in everyone's mind at the same time. Boom! Rocks flew everywhere. A large hole appeared in the wall. A streak of light flew out from the hole. Together with the rocks that were flying everywhere, it carried a force of 10,000 pounds and pierced towards the fire Qilin. Everyone saw this streak of light. It was very familiar. Cries of surprise rang out one after another. The hidden mysterious sword. The hidden mysterious sword was originally slapped into the rock by the fire Qilin and disappeared without a trace. No one would have thought that it would fly out again. Moreover, its attack power was so strong that it shocked everyone. The hidden mysterious sword shook everyone's spirit. They all thought of one thing at the same time. In this world, only Tang Zheng could control the hidden mysterious sword. Coupled with the strange reaction of the fire Qilin, could it be that all of this was done by Tang Zheng? Otherwise, it did not make sense. This meant that Tang Zheng was not dead. Before everyone could fully understand what was going on, the hidden mysterious sword had already fiercely pierced into the fire Qilin. Previously, the fire Qilin could dodge the attack of the hidden mysterious sword, but this time, it was impossible. Its movements were restricted, and the attack of the hidden mysterious sword was so fast and fierce, how could he dodge the attack? The hidden mysterious sword pierced into the fire Cheelant's body, and it roared angrily again, struggling non-stop. However, the red light that wrapped around its body firmly bound it, and there was no way for it to break free. The hidden mysterious sword did not stop. Instead, it slowly entered the fire Cheelant's body. In the end, it even disappeared into the fire Cheelant's body. Seeing that, Li Xiaotian had an idea. With a flash of light in his hand, he knocked an arrow and aimed the sun-shooting arrow at the fire Cheelant. The sun-shooting arrow and the heaven-shocking bow were sacred tools with extraordinary power, but that also depended on the person. In the past, they could kill the soul of the golden crow, but when facing the fire Cheelant, Li Xiaotian's cultivation was still unable to hurt it. In the end, he followed in everyone's footsteps and lost to the fire Cheelant. This was not because the sacred tool was not good enough, but because the cultivation of the person using the sacred tool was too different from the fire Cheelant. The fire Cheelant was a divine beast, not inferior to the dragon clan. This fire Cheelant had cultivated in the earth's core for who knows how many years, so its strength was naturally extraordinary. This was why it was so easy to win despite being outnumbered. But that was then, and this was now. At this moment, the fire Cheelant was already injured by the hidden mysterious sword, and its strength was greatly reduced. Li Xiaotian saw the opportunity and used the sun-shooting arrow to attack. Wang! The bowstring trembled, and the sun-shooting arrow left the bowstring, quickly, accurately, and ruthlessly shooting into the fire Cheelant's body. This time, it had no way to dodge. Yay! Seeing that the sun-shooting arrow had hit the fire Cheelant, Li Xiaotian could not help but wave his fist, so excited that his cheeks were flushed. Seeing this, Tian Chanzi could not sit still and wait for death. Dragging his tired body, he shouted, "Attack! Take this opportunity and attack it fiercely." Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Streaks of colorful magic treasures dragged long tails of flames in the air, like meteors, hitting the fire Cheelant at the same time. Boom boom boom. Waves of violent explosions erupted from the fire Cheelant's body, and the sky was filled with light shooting in all directions, shaking the mountains and the earth. Ling did not stay idle, her figure flashed, and once again grabbed the main root of the tree of life, shaking the main root, as if shaking out a few flowers. With a whoosh, the main root wrapped around the fire Cheelant and tied it up like a dumpling. For the latest novel updates, please visit the website. You're tuning in to the A Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.